House will commence its business as lined up for consideration, or the business that is lined up to be transacted this afternoon. And back to what the senators, as they convene for this plenary sitting, will be looking at. Pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 53, paragraph 1, with regards to statements and questions, the Senator for Machakos County, Honorable Agnes Kavindu, will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the operations of the Social Health Authority, commonly referred to as SHA, being conducted by private individuals. The Honorable Senator for Machakos County will also seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget regarding alleged wastage and lack of prioritization of public resources in the county that she represents at the Senate, that is the Machakos County nominated Senator Crystal Asige, also making her way into the chair. If you're just joining us, is that the House is about to commence its business. However, at the commencement of the House business, as per the rules that guides the House, at least 15 senators shall be seated inside the chambers for the House to be deemed to have attained its quorum. We can see the Honorable Senator for Kakamega, who is also the majority whip, counting the numbers of the senators, or counting the senators who are already inside the chambers to see whether that quorum has been achieved. It is at this point that the whips of the House are required to whip the members to make their way into the chamber. So as we can see, the Honorable Senator has just made his way out to find out whether there are other senators who have not yet reached inside the chambers and just within the precincts of the Parliament. So if you're just joining us, that the House is about to commence its business. Once that quorum is achieved, then without any further delay, that business that is lined up for consideration this afternoon will commence. Pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 53, where members have an opportunity to seek for statements from various standing committee, the Senator for Marsabit County, Honorable Mohammed Chute, will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing, and this is with regards to the construction of Korongo Road in Karen, Nairobi City County. The member for Marsabit County will also seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations. This is with regards to cases of foreign nationals working in Kenya's informal business sector. This statement is regarding the cases of foreign nationals working in the Kenya's informal business sector. These are statements that, as provided for in the House Standing Order number 53.1, these various members will require responses, or will be seeking for responses on these concerns that they have raised from the various standing committees. The House is about to commence its business. The prayer has been said and the chair taken. As you can see, the speaker is already inside the chamber. However, the House has not raised the required quorum, or has not quorated for it to be able to commence its business. Hence, the quorum bell that is currently on. It is a 10-minute quorum bell for members who are yet to make their way to the chambers, at least to hasten their steps and get to the chambers for the House to commence its business. The time allocated for the sitting is 2:30. It is now 2:42. And the House is yet to raise that particular quorum. Remember, if the House fails to raise that quorum as provided for in the House standing orders, then the sitting risks to be adjourned until the next sitting. However, we are hoping that that quorum has been achieved. We saw the majority whip make his way out of the chamber, of course, to be able to whip members to get into the House. That quorum is very crucial for the House or for the commencement of House business. And that is why you see, if it has not been attained, then the business cannot commence. Once that quorum is achieved, of course, the Speaker will call the House to order for the business to commence. But until then, we shall wait to see what happens and take a look at the business that is to be transacted. Speaking of the quorum, there are bills that this afternoon the members are set to go into division on this particular bill. And of course, you understand that at the division stage, the House has to have a certain quorum. Narok Senator Honorable Leda Molekina made his way into the chamber. More members making their way into the chamber. Nominated Senator Veronica, Senator Githuku, Senator Edwin Sifuna already making their way. So I believe that the quorum will have been achieved. And I will be in no time handing this business back to the proceedings of the House. We're just waiting for that particular confirmation. Senator Kinywa, Senator Wambua have also made their way into the chamber. I believe that the quorum has been raised, although that is the Deputy Speaker also, Senator Dan Manzo, also making their way into the chamber. It is without doubt that the quorum must have been achieved at this point. So we are just waiting for the Speaker to confirm that, and then the business will commence. The bell has actually stopped, but we understand that the House has attained that quorum. Once the Speaker begins to address the House, then I will hand these proceedings back to you to follow up on it. Of course, we are expecting a few communications from the Speaker. And we believe once the quorum Senator Kavindu also has made her way into the chamber. Remember, that particular quorum that we believe has been raised will also enable the House continue on its other businesses, especially the bills that will be considered at the division stage. This is the Public Fundraising Appeals Bill. A bill originating from the Senate is part of the bill that will be considered at the division stage. This means that a debate on these particular bills were concluded. And also the Environment Laws Amendment Bill, a bill also originating from the Senate, will also be considered at the division stage. Another bill that is lined up for consideration at the division is the County Civic Education Bill, the Heritage and Museums Bill, the County Library Services Bill. These are 5 bills that the senators this afternoon, once they embark on these bills, will be considering them on the division stage for them to be able to proceed to the third reading. and the final stage. The House is about to commence its business. The Speaker, of course, as we can see, and a few members consulting on a number of issues, of course, regarding various businesses of the Senate. However, once everything is set, then the House will commence its business. Remember, the quorum bell or rather the 10-minute quorum bell has now lapsed, but from the screens that are showing us the inside of the chamber is that we can see that at least members have may have raised that quorum. We may have at least the 15 senators. So once that consultation that we can see taking place between the Speaker and various members of the Senate, once that consultation is over, then of course the business will commence. Various motions also lined up for consideration. The report of the Mediation Committee on the Conflict of Interest Bill. This is a bill that is originating from the National Assembly. And this is a motion that will seek the House to adopt the report of the Mediation Committee. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast. The Speaker has put his mic on. He's about, of course, to address or start the business of the House. So I will hand this particular proceeding over to you. Good afternoon.
Clerk, you may proceed to call the first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Now, honorable senators, I have a communication to make relating to the admission of Senator Gloria Oroba MP back into the Senate following the conclusion of our suspension. As honorable senators will recall, on the 12th of February 2025, I issued a communication on the implementation of the resolution of the Senate to adopt the report of the Committee of Powers and Privileges on the conduct of Senator Gloria Oroba MP made on the 20th of September 2023. Now, honorable senators will also recall that subsequent to the Senate resolution, Senator Gloria Oroba MP filed petition number E283 of 2023 and a judicial review application E008 of 2023, which sought to quash the recommendations of the Committee of Powers and Privileges and the resolution of the Senate made on the 20th of September 2023. Honorable senators will also note that on the 28th of September 2023, the High Court at Machakos issued orders whose effect was to suspend implementation of the resolution of the Senate on the conduct of Senator Gloria Oroba MP, pending the hearing and determination of the matter. The High Court petition and judicial review application was subsequently merged by the court, had and determined on the 15th of January 2025. In the judgment, the court dismissed the petition and the judicial review application. The import of this was that the court ordered staying the resolution of the Senate on the report of the Committee on Powers and Privileges, as well as any other consequential orders in the matter that had been filed by the senator lapsed. Now, honorable senators, consequently, in the communication issued on the 12th of February 2025, and in accordance with section 15(7), as read together with paragraph 4 of the third schedule to the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, I proceeded to enforce the resolution of the Senate on the report of the Committee on Powers and Privileges. In the communication, I informed the Senate that the 79 calendar day suspension that ought to be applied in the year 2023 will run from Wednesday 12th of February 2025 to Thursday 1st of May 2025. In light of this directive, Senator Gloria Oroba MP commenced her suspension as resolved by the Senate on the 20th of September 2023. However, honorable senators will recall that on the 26th of February 2025, the Senate varied its resolution on the report of the committee. Senator Abbas, be attentive, please. The Senate varied its resolution on the report of the Committee on Powers and Privileges on account of Senator Oroba. The effect of the variation was such that the suspension of the senator was reduced from 79 calendar days to 30 calendar days. Accordingly, the 30 calendar day suspension commenced on the 12th of February 2025 and concluded on the 13th of March 2025. Now, honorable senators, in accordance with the resolutions passed on the 20th of September 2023 and on the 26th of February 2025, Senator Gloria Oroba is required to tender an apology to the Senate, honorable senators, the Clerk of the Senate, and the Secretariat of Parliament before being admitted to the Senate. I now invite Senator Gloria Oroba MP to tender an apology in the manner prescribed in the report of the Committee of Powers and Privileges and as adopted by the Senate. Senator Oroba is required to read the prescribed apology verbatim without any addition, omission, or amendment. Additionally, the apology shall not be followed by any comment by the senator or another senator. Senator Gloria, you may now proceed to tender your apology as you stand at the bar. The other honorable senators may walk in and take their seats.
Mr. Speaker, I, Senator Gloria Oroba, hereby tender my unreserved apology to this Senate. I undertake that I shall abide by the responsibilities of leadership as set out in the Constitution, the Leadership and Integrity Act 2012, and the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017. I therefore beseech to be admitted to the chamber. I thank you.
Now, have a seat, Gloria, Senator Gloria. That is not the apology as prescribed by the Senate in the report. Now, let me help you. The Senate sitting on the 20th of September 2023, while considering the report by the Powers and Privileges Committee, passed certain recommendations. One of those recommendations, I believe it was recommendation number 3. It read as follows. On resumption of the Senate sitting for the third session, the senator, while at the bar, apologizes to the Senate, honorable senators, the Clerk of the Senate, and the Secretariat of Parliament before being admitted to the Senate, pursuant to Section 17(3)(c) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017, in the following manner. So the Senate actually came up with the wording of the apology. It is not open to you to craft or word your own apology. The plenary worded the kind of apology that you're supposed to tender, and it goes as follows. That I, Senator Gloria Oroba, hereby, under my unreserved apology, tender my unreserved apology to the Senate, honorable senators, Clerk of the Senate, and the Secretariat of Parliament for having acted in a manner which pursuant to Section 16E and paragraph 7 and 8 of the 4th schedule to the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017 constituted a breach of parliamentary privilege, and that reflected adversely on the dignity and integrity of Parliament and its members, and was contrary to the best interests of Parliament and its members. I undertake that I shall abide by the responsibilities of leadership as set out in the Constitution, the Leadership and Integrity Act 2012, and the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017. I therefore beseech to be admitted to the chamber. I thank you. This is the prescribed apology as adopted by the plenary. It cannot be amended. It is only Senate sitting a plenary that can amend the wording. And therefore, Senator Oroba, proceed to read the apology as prescribed by the plenary and by this Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I have apologized before, and I have no problem reading a prescribed apology, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to draw to your attention that we currently have a court case that is ongoing, Mr. Speaker. And I have been advised, Mr. Speaker, that the prescribed apology in the wording that it has been put, Mr. Speaker, I've been advised that it is self-incriminating and it undermines my right to a fair process with the current court proceeding that is there. Mr. Speaker, I have no problem apologizing to the House. I've apologized to the House. I continue to say that I apologize for my conduct. I continue to seek to my colleagues that I am sorry on the ways that I offended them. I have no issues apologizing. Even now I am apologizing, Mr. Speaker. And I brought this to your attention prior to this sitting, that there is a sentence there that actually is self-incrimination and that can be used against me in an ongoing court process. And because of this, Mr. Speaker, I had kindly requested to give the apology as I have read it, and even to further tell my colleagues and to this House that I continue to be sorry for the conduct that they perceived to be unbecoming. Mr. Speaker, I don't know how else to appeal, because as I stand here, Mr. Speaker, I have sat out my suspension without pay. I have suffered the consequences of reporting issues, Mr. Speaker, and I continue to suffer those consequences, and I'm okay with that. However, Mr. Speaker, I really don't understand in whose interest it is for a prescribed apology with a self-incriminating sentence that actually puts me in an issue. So, Mr. Speaker, I appeal to my colleagues and to this House. I am sorry. I don't know how else to say I am sorry. I have said I'm sorry before. Now, I am saying I'm sorry again, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Gloria, you cannot raise a point of order. The senator is not properly admitted to the House. So you cannot raise a point of order against her. Now, Senator Gloria, let me help you. It is not up to the Speaker or the Chair to vary the apology. The apology was prescribed by the Senate sitting at a plenary. It is only the plenary sitting again to reopen this matter and amend that particular apology. As it stands, it must be read as contained in the report. So you either read this apology as prescribed, or you go think about it and come back at any day, any time that you'll be willing to read it as is prescribed. There is no two-way about it, because by allowing the apology that you've read out, and basically usurping the powers of plenary by amending a report that was passed and adopted by this Senate. I do not have those powers.
I stand guided, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
I will, I have, as I've said, I have no problem reading it. But I have been advised, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not a legal expert, and I have an ongoing court case, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Gloria,
so
it's
I don't know what else is required from me, Mr. Speaker.
The Chair is speaking, Senator Gloria. You know our standing orders. I have told you that there's only two ways. There are only two ways. You either read as prescribed, walk in and take your seat, or you don't read as prescribed and you walk out until such a time that you'll be ready to read the oath as prescribed. Which way do you want to go?
Mr. Speaker, having had your advice and noting that by reading this apology, I will be incriminating myself, noting that this is attached to my work, I find that very unfair. Mr. Speaker, I stand by my dignity and I stand by where I am, and I have no option. Where you have left me, I have no option but to walk away from my duties, because I cannot read an incriminating statement on a matter that has not been investigated. And Mr. Speaker, as it stands, I want to say that this being the last statement that I make, I continue to stand by my statements, and I want to say that it is truly unfair that an incriminating statement is being put in an apology so that I can tie myself down to something that has not been investigated, not by Parliamentary Service Commission, not by this House, not by an independent one. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, I have no option but to actually walk away from chambers as you have directed, Mr. Speaker. And having said that, I would also want to inform this House that it is happening to me now, but it is going to happen to you in the future, because I am not fighting anyone. I am actually saying I reported a case, it has not been investigated, and the powers that be are actually influencing a process so that I can incriminate myself and therefore perjure myself in a court case that is ongoing. I find this very unfair, and this being the upper house, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I'm disappointed, and I want to say that I am not going to trade a salary for something that has not been investigated. I can stay without the salary, I can stay without the position, Mr. Speaker, and I still continue to say it is unfair that someone who has reported a matter is being taken through this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Next order, clerk.
It's okay. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The Senate Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of this Senate today, the 18th of March 2025, being 1, the Social Health Insurance Amendment Regulations, LECO Notice number 55 of 2025, 2, the Social Health Insurance Tariffs for Health Services, Regulations, Legal Notice number 56 of 2025, and finally, report of the Office of the Control of Budget on the National Government Budget Implementation Review for the first 6 months of the financial year 2024-2025. I thank you.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statements pursuant to Standing Order 53-1. The Honorable Senator for Machakos County, Senator Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to be able to read the statements. I have 2. One statement, request for an operation of the Social Health Authority, SHA, conducted by private individuals. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Committee on Health regarding the operations of Social Authority, Health Authority, SHA, being conducted by private individuals. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the reasons why Kenyans' health data is being held in private individuals, and whether the tendering process of the Health Care Insurance Fund dignitization system under the Social Health Authority, SHA, was transparently conducted, disclosing details of the award of the contract, the number of bids received, and criteria used in selecting the consortium awarded and costs of the award. 2, state the reasons for the non-disclosure of the control charges fees of 2.5% on members' contributions, claims on health facilities of 5%, and track and trace solutions at the rate of 1.5% for the period of 10 years, with a projected revenue to the consortium of Kenya shillings 111 billion. The highlight where the contract signed between the government and the consortium bars the government on any other person from employing alternative systems. B, the details of the signatories of the account and the contract agreement, explaining why is transfers monies, transfers of funds. Mr. Speaker, I can't concentrate on my, because of this meeting here.
Senators, may the good senator be heard in silence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll repeat A and B. Of the control charges of 2.5 on members' contributions, claim on health facilities of 5%, and track and trace solutions at a rate of 1.5% for a period of 10 years, with the projected revenue of the consortium of 111 billion, and highlight why the contract signed between the government and the consortium bars the government or any other person from employing alternative system. B, of the details of the signatories of the account in the contract agreement, explaining why there is transfer of funds to the escrow account on a daily, weekly basis. C, in the contract agreement of the Kenya shillings 7 billion set aside for training, support, and customer education, the number of health workers to be trained on the system and mode of training that led to arriving at the said costs. 3, explain why the contract signed requires that dispute arising be resolved by arbitration under the rules of the London Court of International Arbitration, contrary to the provisions of Public Procurement Administrative Reviews Board, PPARB, and the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. And 4, provide reasons for the accessibility by the Controller of Budget to the Social Health Authority SHA funds and its operations outside the consolidated fund. Senator Agnes Kavindu Mudhama, Senator Machakos County. I have another statement, Mr. Speaker, so I'll read. The statement request on lack of prioritization and wastage of public resources in Machakos County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of Finance and Budget regarding the lack of prioritization and wastage of public resources in Machakos County. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Office of the Controller of Budget in the report on the county government's budget implementation reviews for the first half of the financial year 2024-2025 reported disturbing and disputant expenditure of the whoing Kenya shillings 372.91 million in domestic and foreign travels by the Machakos County government officials. In the statement, the committee should address the following. 1, provide details on all domestic foreign travels projected and undertaken by the Machakos County government officials for the financial year 2022-2023 and 2023-2024 and 2024-2025, the criteria used in prioritizing the travels budgetary allocation and the costs benefits analysis for each of the travels. 2, explain whether there was transparency and accountability in the budgetary allocation and expenditure in accordance with the principles of public finance management. 3, state the mechanism in place for monitor and report on instances of wastage or misuse of public resources and the channels available for the criticizing of reports concerns about spending of government resources by public officers. 4, clarify whether investigations have been conducted and to identify instances of financial mismanagement of misuse of public resources within the Department of Machakos County and the remedial measures in place. And 5, explain the various strategies the county government of Machakos has put in place to enhance oversight mechanism and strengthen institutional capacity to safeguard public funds and resources. Senator Agnes Kavindu Mudhama, Senator Machakos County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mohammed Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. If you'll allow me, I have 3 statements to read. My first statement is on ongoing livestock vaccination program in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the ongoing livestock vaccination program in the country. In the statement, the committee should, 1, inform the Senate on the specific diseases that the current livestock vaccination program is targeting for prevention and control, giving details on when the livestock vaccination program was officially launched, including the program's objective and the expected outcome. Number 2, provide details on whether the vaccine is locally manufactured or imported, including the manufacturing capacity or the quality to be imported. Number 3, furnish the Senate with details on the funding for the vaccination program, particularly where the funds are sourced from and whether they are included in the current national budget or whether additional allocations have been made for the program. And finally, 4, submit a timeline outlining how long it will take to vaccinate the 22 million head of cattle earmarked for the program and the measures in place to ensure the timely completion of this process. Second statement is on foreign nationals working in Kenya informal business sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding foreign nationals working in Kenya informal business sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is an increase in the number of foreign nationals working in Kenya informally. These individuals are engaged in activities such as barbering, salon work, hawking, and other small-scale enterprises, raising concern about their legal status and the impact on employment opportunities for the locals. In the statement, the committee should address the following. 1, explain the sudden proliferation of foreign nationals engaging in informal business activities in Kenya and whether these aliens, this aligns with existing labor and immigration policies. Number 2, provide official data on the number of foreign nationals working in the informal sector, specifying whether they have valid work permits and if proper immigration procedures were followed before they started their businesses. Number 3, establish whether all these individuals are legally residing in Kenya and outline the government's measures to address cases of illegal stay and undocumented workers in the informal business sector. And finally, number 4, explain any steps the government is taking to regulate and monitor this category of foreign workers to ensure they comply with the licensing, taxation, and labor laws, and clarify any measures in place to protect job opportunities for Kenyan citizens in the informal business sector. My final statement, Honorable Speaker, this is a construction on Korongo Road in Karen, Nairobi County. So, Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing regarding the construction of Korongo Road in Karen. Mr. Speaker, sir, Korongo Road, which spans about 1.1 kilometers, remains incomplete despite ongoing construction efforts. Although stones have been laid, the road, which falls under the jurisdiction of the Kenya Urban Roads Authority, remains unfinished, raising concern among residents on accessibility and infrastructure development in the area. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state the commencement date for the construction works on Korongo Road in Karen and provide an update on its completion status, including challenges encountered, reason for delays, and whether the construction is classified as an emergency repair project under the framework contract for emergency roads repair management. Number 2, outline plans by the State Department of Roads for upgrading the road to bitumen standards, specifying whether the project has been advertised for repair, if a tender has been awarded, and provide details of the contractor undertaking the works. Number 3, provide the total cost of project, including a breakdown of projected expenses and sources of funding allocated for its completion. And finally, number 4, state the completion timeline for the project, ensuring transparency in project scheduling and accountability for any delays. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Professor Tom Agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have 3 statements. The first statement is on the revitalization of the port of Kisumu. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing regarding the current state, operational challenges and future plans for the revitalization of the port of Kisumu. Mr. Speaker, despite efforts to revamp the port of Kisumu, the facility continues to operate at a fraction of its capacity, significantly limiting its contribution to regional trade and economic growth. The deterioration of the rail connection from Mombasa to Kisumu has led to a steep decline in transit cargo volumes over the past decades. While the port still handles some local and specific transit cargo, overall volumes have dwindled due to a lack of critical mass, inefficient transport infrastructure, and unreliable connectivity. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, Lake Victoria ports have roll-on, roll-off ramps, and all break bulk cargo is handled manually, further slowing operation. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, the committee should address 1, provide an update on the Port of Kisumu's current operational capacity, including the annual cargo throughput, transit cargo volumes, and the utilization of available infrastructure. 2, explain the measures being taken to restore and modernize the rail connection between Mombasa and Kisumu to enhance cargo transportation and revive trade efficiency, and clarify whether there are plans to invest in alternative transport systems, including road, rail, and lake transport connectivity to make Kisumu a competitive logistic hub. 3, outline the government's strategic plan to upgrade the port's infrastructure, including cargo handling facilities, automation, and integration of modern logistic relations. 4, state the government's long-term vision for leveraging Kisumu Port as a major trade gateway for the East African community and the African continental free trade area after markets. And lastly, explain the steps being taken at both the national and county government levels to attract private sector investment and regional partnerships to support port operations and improve efficiency. Mr. Speaker, my second statement is on the transfer of core county functions by the county government of Kisumu to the city of Kisumu. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations regarding the transfer of core county functions by the county government of Kisumu to the city of Kisumu, as published by the county government in the Standard newspaper of 20th January 2025. Mr. Speaker, the transfer of specified functions raises grave constitutional and governance concerns, since there is no legal provision that allows a county government to transfer its functions to a municipality or city. The law only provides for delegation of such functions. The transfer of the functions also negatively impacts service delivery to other areas of Kisumu County outside Kisumu City and potentially marginalizes these areas in the development agenda. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, the committee should address the following: the legal basis for the transfer of core county functions by the county government of Kisumu to the city of Kisumu, as published by the county government in the Standard newspaper of 20th January 2025. 2, rationalize the transfer of functions, also stating whether public participation was conducted in accordance with Articles 10 and 174 of the Constitution. 3, the implications of the transfer of function, including its effects on, Mr. Speaker, A, operations of the county government in view of the fact that its key functions have been transferred. B, equitable development of both Kisumu City and other urban and rural areas within the Kisumu County. C, revenue collections among county functions. And D, financial oversight, particularly how the Senate ensures transparency and accountability in the management of public resources allocated for the transferred functions. The fate of county staff previously engaged in undertaking the transferred functions, stating the measures that have been taken or have been put in place to safeguard their livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, the last statement is on the state of rice farming in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the state of rice farming in Kisumu County and the interventions by the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, and the Government of Kenya, GOK, to support the sector. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide a status update on the progress of the Ahero Irrigation Scheme Rehabilitation Project, detailing the scope of works, project timelines, and the utilization of the Kenya shillings 3 billion funding from JICA. 2, outline the objectives and achievements and challenges of the rice-based and market-oriented agriculture promotion project in Kisumu County, explaining the measures in place to address key issues affecting rice farmers, such as post-harvest losses, limited market access, and vulnerability to climate-related disasters like floods, while also highlighting any interventions aimed at improving productivity and resilience. 3, state the current rice production levels in Kisumu County, including the average yield per acre and the number of farmers benefiting from JICA and the Government of Kenya interventions, and provide details on any planned initiatives by JICA and GOK to further improve rice farming, enhance food security, and ensure long-term sustainability in the sector. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, indicate the initiatives undertaken by the Government of Kenya, or the County Government of Kisumu, to expand and modernize the Ahero and Rai irrigation schemes to increase rice production, providing details on planned infrastructure improvements, technological advancements, and timelines for implementation to ensure enhanced efficiency and productivity in rice farming. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, before I allow comments on the requested statements, allow me to make the following communication. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting students and teachers from Elite Friends Boys School, Kajiado County. The delegation comprises of 33 students and 3 teachers who are undertaking a study tour to the Senate. On behalf of the Senate, on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish them all the very best during their visit. Again, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Chiboney Girls High School, Bomet County. The delegation comprises of 97 students and 6 teachers who are undertaking a study tour to the Senate. On behalf of the Senate, on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish them the very best during their visit. I will allow the Senator for Kajiado County to extend a word of welcome to the delegation from Kajiado County, and also the Majority Whip to extend a word of welcome to the delegation from Bomet County, each to take not more than a minute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, but I don't know, I've not really got the school. Which school is this? Honorable Speaker. Okay, thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity also to join you, Honorable Speaker, to congratulate and thank the school, the students, and the teachers from Kajiado. This is Senator Seki, Senator for Kajiado, I really want to appreciate you and thank you for finding time to be here today to join us together as Senate and as Parliament to learn more about Parliament, particularly the Senate, now that we are still on. The other House of National Assembly are on recess. And I want to thank you so much and welcome you to the Senate as you continue to learn. I want to thank you so much, and as you go back home, you greet the parents and the teachers and the rest of the students, because I know you'll really learn a lot from the debate and what we have been talking all along, especially when you've now learned from the first message of the Speaker as he's opened this House. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I welcome the young people to this House, that I hope they will have an opportunity to serve in the coming days, let me celebrate with them the rich leadership that has traditionally come from Bomet. I remember when we started devolution in 2013, the governor of Bomet, His Excellency Isaac Ruto, became the first chairman of the Council of Governors, and he did a great job. I'm saying all these good things on behalf of your Senator, Senator Hilary Sikei. You're most welcome.
Now, Honorable Deputy Speaker, you know better that you cannot raise on a point of order. Yes, then you can only seek intervention. You may proceed. You may proceed.
Honorable Speaker, we are very busy in this House this afternoon, and the working environment is not conducive, Mr. Speaker, because of the music playing outside by maybe people who have come to bring their petitions or who want to be heard by the Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, in honor, Mr. Speaker, they can submit their maybe petition silently without the music that they have bring, Mr. Speaker, so that also we can do some work. And is it intentional music that they are playing, Mr. Speaker, or maybe if you can do the sergeant of terms, they can be asked to submit their petition silently to the clerk's office, and then they will be handed, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, indeed that singing and petitioning has been ongoing for the last maybe 5 hours. Because when we sat as a panel, that music was still on. When we sat at the Senate Business Committee, that music was still on. It is still on. Now, whatever is the grievance, I think the leadership should be able to go listen to them, pick whatever memorandum that is to be picked, and thereafter ask them to retreat as Parliament looks into their grievances. I think thereafter is when we can invoke the powers of the Sergeant at Arms to disperse them. I think it's good to give them an ear before we tell them to disperse. So in this regard, allow me to nominate 2 of our senators to go engage them and come back to report to the House. Otherwise, we will not be able to transact any business in this House. The noise out there is certainly disruptive of the proceedings, but again, we cannot just wish it away. The only thing we can do is to give the petitioners an ear and then ask them to kindly retreat as we look into their grievances. I will nominate Senator Boni Halwale, the Minority Whip, Senator Sifuna, and the Deputy Speaker, the 3 of you, to proceed to give them an ear, report to the House, see if we can find some peace. Yes, seek your clarification.
Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity of last week to discharge the duties that you are giving me now. And Mr. Speaker, it must be understood that those are workers of the universal health care who happen to share the same professional background with me, albeit at different levels. It would look a bit dishonest that having promised them action last week, I go back to do the same. Unless, Mr. Speaker, you are asking me to go and request them to go and play the Kasongo song at the State House. If they are looking for the president who they call Kasongo, he's not in the Senate. He's at State House, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter...
So are you disqualified?
I beg that I be disqualified.
So the Deputy Speaker and the Senator from Nairobi, just go give an ear to these wonderful Kenyans and ask them kindly to retreat as we look into their grievances. So we proceed to the comments on the statements that have been requested. Senator Beatrice Akinyi.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you for granting me the opportunity to comment on the statements, and I want to add my voice to the comment by the Senator for Kisumu on the transfer of core county functions by the county government of Kisumu to the city of Kisumu. Honorable Speaker, the county government, the Urban Areas and Cities Act envisaged a situation where urban areas would be classified into either a city, a municipality, a town, or a market, Honorable Speaker. And I've seen the concerns raised by Senator Ojienda on transferring these functions. But, Honorable Speaker, the spirit of that, the Urban Areas and Cities Act, required that the urban areas would run with efficiency and effectiveness, have a business-like running, and the urban areas would be able to sustain themselves, Honorable Speaker. The urban areas management would only ensure that this happens if they are performing certain functions, Honorable Speaker. Some of these functions are not limited to urban specific services like provision of water, management of fire stations in the towns, the management of sewerage systems to be specifically manage both waste, liquid and solid waste services, Honorable Speaker. The municipalities and cities should be able to ensure that the urban areas have street lights, the urban areas are able to build access roads within the cities. And Honorable Speaker, this can only be possible if they are managing certain budgets that are consistent with those services, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I do not know to what extent these services have been transferred, but Honorable Speaker, the cities or the urban areas have even a management system where they have boards that are running these cities, and those boards are structured in a way in which they have a chair, they have board members, they have a CEO that is running the city, referred to as the city manager. Honorable Speaker, it means that these boards have to run a system. They have to run services within the cities. Honorable Speaker, this would ensure that the cities are managed well, that they are able to service the city dwellers as consistent with their establishment. And so, Honorable Speaker, they have to run budgets that are allocated to them as a different sector within the county government allocations, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it means then that they must have functions which they are performing as boards, for which they are established and for which the people within the cities and the urban dwellers have expectations, Honorable Speaker. I therefore support the fact that they must have functions, they must have budgets to run these functions, and the cities and all the urban areas must run efficiently and effectively. I therefore want to say, Honorable Speaker, that there must be services that this city, the city management is performing. I only need to understand that in which way did they maybe transfer these functions and procedurally. But Honorable Speaker, just as other services are devolved, and just as the counties have devolved structures like the sub-county and the ward structure, the cities also have their structures within which they have to operate. Honorable Speaker, the cities must operate in a way in which the services are efficiently and effectively delivered to the city dwellers, and so it means that those services, even though they might not have been transferred in a way that is consistent with the senator, Honorable Speaker, the city structures must have functions they are performing that ensures they have a budget, and they also have personnel that perform these services, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that I support the transfer of the services if there are services that have been transferred within the law, because how else would the services be done if they do not have them? Honorable Speaker, that is my comment. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Mungatana.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii. Na mimi nitoe maoni kuhusu chanjo za mifugo. Sisi watu wa Tana River, Bwana Spika, tumekuwa na wasiwasi kwa sababu tangu chanjo hizo zilipotangazwa na serikali kuu kumeingia mushkil. Wengine wanasema ziko na shida, wengine wanasema ziko sawa. Tungependa kamati waangalie na waseme kwa kikamilifu ya kwamba hizi chanjo ni safi na zitatusaidia na sisi pamoja na mifugo wetu. Pili, wakiwa wanaangalia swala hili pia tueleze ni pesa ngapi ambazo zinatumika kwa program hii ya serikali, na je, hii pesa ni serikali ya Kenya, government of Kenya, ama ni pesa ambayo inatoka kwa wafadhili ama donors. Ya tatu na ya mwisho, wakiwa wanaangalia hili swala la chanjo, je, ni budget ya pesa ngapi ambayo county ya Tana River nao wameweka kwa ajili ya kuchanja mifugo wetu wakati huu, haswa wakati huu ambao inaenda msimu wa mvua. Bwana Spika, ningependa sana kamati waangalie ili tujue ukweli wa haya mambo. Watu wanataka kujua, Bwana Spika, ukweli kabisa, na ikiwezekana kamati waongeleshe wanasayansi wanaohusika na mambo haya, kwa sababu kuna siasa ambayo imeingizwa na wale ambao wanahusika na mambo ya mifugo wengine wameingia wasiwasi. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to make my brief comments on the statement as sought by Senator Professor Tom Ojienda on the transfer of core functions to our cities. Mr. Speaker, there's a saying that says a law is valuable, not because it is law, but because there's a certain right in it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a House, together with our counterpart at the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, we passed into law what is now known as the Urban Areas and Cities Act, Mr. Speaker. And in that particular law, Mr. Speaker, there are certain salient provisions of the law that clearly confirm and speaks to the transfer of functions to our cities, Mr. Speaker, to what we call municipalities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a member of the County Public Investments and Special Funds Committee, Mr. Speaker, we have recently been examining audit reports on the functions, management, and financial and audit probity of this one, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to my shock, Mr. Speaker, even being a member of that committee, Mr. Speaker, you find most of these boards are not independent, Mr. Speaker. There has not been a complete transfer of functions from the county executives to these boards, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most governors are not even aware that there exists such a law, Mr. Speaker. They still want to claw on this function, Mr. Speaker, and as such, Mr. Speaker, most of the functions that are meant to be undertaken by our boards at municipal level, Mr. Speaker, are not happening, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for instance, the Diani municipality, Mr. Speaker, and I know my good governor from Kwale will be appearing before us anytime soon, Mr. Speaker, and I want to imagine she has completely ceded functions to this board, Mr. Speaker, so that we can give and confer those rights in law to those officials tasked with the role of managing the functions and the roles and duties of those boards, Mr. Speaker, so that they can operate independently and autonomously, Mr. Speaker, without any undue influence from the executive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to urge the Committee on Devolution and perhaps JLAC, Mr. Speaker, as they go around the country and sampling counties that are either compliant or not, Mr. Speaker, to be firm and speak to the governors that, look, there is a law that allows them to transfer core functions and mandates to these boards, Mr. Speaker, so that we just don't end up having boards that are not autonomous, boards that cannot make decisions on their own, Mr. Speaker, boards that are just an extension or rather an appendage of the executive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Senator for Kisumu, Professor Tom Ojienda, for a very well thought out statement, Mr. Speaker, and I know this gives a chance to most of our governors to be able to allow people below them, municipal managers, accountants, and heads of water service providers, Mr. Speaker, to be able to be independent functionally so that they can perform their core duties as envisaged in that urban area that is that, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for those many comments.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to contribute to a livestock vaccination campaign by Honorable Senator Shute. Honorable Speaker, livestock campaign or vaccination has been a common trend in this country. It's annually done, and has been going on for many years. And I think it's a routine thing that has been done always by the Minister of Livestock, Agriculture and Livestock. However, this particular one has caused a lot of interest and a lot of concern among the livestock farmers. Honorable Speaker, there are two issues that cause these concerns. One is that there was a clip that was going on around the social media where somebody by the name Bill Gates was talking on how to control animal fatting. So we're wondering if this is an AI, artificial intelligence issue, or is a fact, where animals are they're saying that livestock emits a lot of gas, and it is actually causing global warming, which is a very unfortunate situation, that emissions from livestock belching and all these things cannot cause any global warming, despite what is happening in the first developed world. The many industries are emitting a lot of gas, and but I was surprising. However, Honorable Speaker, too, there has been a lot of interest, especially in our head of state, saying that livestock must be vaccinated. It has not been a very common thing, because this was just a routine thing, and I don't know why it has developed so much interest on the head of state, and this is actually what has caused concerns, actually. For farmers get worried, especially the issue of Bill Gates. That was going down. I don't know whether it's true story, where it was an artificial intelligence issues. This I'm being told. Voices can be changed, and even your pictures everything can be changed. And therefore, one other thing, Honorable Speaker, for this doubt that has really caused, this thing has caused a lot of concerns. The livestock farmers are not now willing to bring the animals for vaccination. Most of them are resisting. And we might miss the routine vaccinations that has been going on for many years. And it's very necessary to have the routine animal vaccination so as we can be able to control diseases for the purpose. It's a routine thing because there is something called the OAE that safeguards internationally that animals must be vaccinated, for animals to be transported, for animals to be sold, animals to be exported to other countries. And therefore, this is actually a statement has come timely that we need to get from the Ministry of Livestock the right position of this vaccination campaign. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Senator Seki.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I also want to support the statement from Honorable Senator Chute on the livestock vaccination program that is there in the country at the moment. Honorable Speaker, it is coming in a very right time when we overheard as livestock farmers or counties that have livestock in our counties, that the country has pronounced itself, even the government has pronounced itself to vaccinate livestock all over the country. Honorable Speaker, this statement is specifically looking at the kind of diseases, or even want to know the kind of diseases or the type of disease that this vaccination will be carried or even will be done within the specific period. Honorable Speaker, we are yet to know what kind of vaccination is this, because as livestock farmers, we've not been told the kind of vaccination that the government is trying to vaccinate our cows and animals. And you know very well that, Honorable Speaker, farmers usually have a variety of vaccinations, and we usually have vaccinations according to the time to time. Honorable Speaker, this vaccination is something that we want to really to be clear and to be told as farmers. I know very well that the issue of budget has been requested in the statement, because we are yet to know what kind of a budget has been put in place to vaccinate animals. Yet we don't see in the national budget last year or even the year before. So we want to know exactly this statement will tell us, or even the ministry will give farmers as to where are they getting the budget to vaccinate animals. Honorable Speaker, the other thing is that we really need to know and have a concern on the issue of national government taking or even usurping the functions of county governments without a proper consultation, because this is a fully devolved function to county governments. And as a Senate, we are here to protect the interest of counties. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that will be very interesting to see the statement will try to solve or even to bring is the issue of the approvals of national veterinary boards, if they have really approved this kind of a vaccination for our animals. Honorable Speaker, I also want to take an opportunity to add my voice also to the statement from Honorable Senator for Kisumu, Professor Ojienda. This statement talk about the functions, the transfer of functions to municipalities or even to cities. I want really to echo what the professor has said, but we are looking forward to see if the counties have devolved all the function to the cities. But I think we need to have, or even to support the spirit of devolution by devolving more functions to the local, to the lowest level of counties. So I think if the county government has transferred functions to cities and municipalities within its county, I think that is the proper way on how it should be, because we are looking at the counties trying to usurp and get almost everything within themselves, and even not devolving their functions to the lowest level, so that the services reach to the local mwananchi. So thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I support also.
Yeah, Senator Fomeru, what is your intervention?
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much indeed. Honorable Speaker, a few minutes I'm going to disperse myself and the Senator representing Nairobi County to listen to our brothers and sisters, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union. Mr. Speaker, we went there and we have received their petitions. One on the petition by Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union on the non-compliance with the collective bargaining agreement and non-compliance of Social Health Authority, 2.7% deductions to one's public health insurance coverage. And another one, Honorable Speaker, a petition on unfair terms of service and in delay in absorption of all the 8,571 health workers under Universal Health Coverage USC contract. So, Honorable Speaker, we did what you sent us to do, and they have agreed that we look for a way forward, which I will request my what can I call him? My colleague, Senator for Nairobi, to give the way forward, because we have proposed something with them, so that also it can look like a serious House, Honorable Speaker. Yeah, thank you so much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And first of all, I thank you for the confidence in both the Senator of Meru and myself to be able to execute that duty that you have sent on behalf of the House. Indeed, we have had a conversation with members of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, and also UHC workers from across the country, Honorable Speaker. They were the guests who are making all that merry outside our gate. And as the Senator for Meru has said, Chair, these are not new matters. It is compliance by the national government and the county governments with a collective bargaining agreement that was signed after that long strike that we had with KMPDU. Apparently, the concerned government agencies are not complying with that. And secondly, Honorable Speaker, they say that even though the counties are deducting the 2.75% share every month, they are not remitting it to the authority. And therefore, even when they fall sick themselves, and there are medical practitioners who are taking care of us, but when they fall sick themselves, SHA is not honoring those claims because the county governments are not remitting the 2.75 that they deduct, which is something that is unacceptable, Honorable Speaker, and it is in the place of this House to ensure that there is compliance by county governments in terms of remittance of all deductions from salaried workers. Honorable Speaker, lastly, of course, there's the issue we have discussed here many times about absorption of the universal health care workers, especially those who are not working in national hospitals. We had that debate here, Honorable Speaker, where a few of their colleagues were absorbed, and now they are on permanent and pensionable basis. But those who are not absorbed, Honorable Speaker, although they have the same roles and they execute the same workload, they are paid almost 3 times less than what their colleagues on permanent and pensionable basis are paid. So our suggestion to them, Honorable Speaker, and they have agreed, and we want to beseech this House so that we deal with this issue with the sort of dignity that it requires. We cannot have our medical practitioners on the streets out there. We have invited them, and I hope that you will agree to this, Honorable Speaker, to a meeting that will happen with the Committee on Health of this House, and we have proposed that we invite the Chair of the Council of Governors or a representative of the Council of Governors, together with the Cabinet Secretary responsible for health, and we will provide the necessary environment for all these issues to be ironed out in a manner that will leave everybody satisfied on the challenges that the government is facing, on the CBA and all these other issues of absorption of UHC workers. And from then on, Honorable Speaker, we can at least see light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm hoping that the Senate adopts that proposal that we have made together with my colleague from Meru as a way forward for this particular matter. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Speaker and the Senator for Nairobi. Now, Honorable Senators, don't get irritated when Kenyans come petitioning this House. In fact, it goes to prove one thing, the trust and confidence they have in you as a leadership. And therefore, whenever these things happen, it's good to give these people a shoulder to lean on, listen to them, and as a leadership, let's seek for solutions that will address their problems. Now, having listened to the Deputy Speaker and the Senator for Nairobi, I do direct the Secretariat through the clerk that a meeting be caused between the Health Committee, COG, and the CS Health to discuss this matter. And that meeting should be called as soon as possible. We know we are going on recess on Thursday. If that can be done within the first week of the recess, so that we get to the bottom of this and offer solutions. I wouldn't want to be the Speaker who presided over public relations with such heavy matters. Those workers who've petitioned Parliament, they're living with a lot of hope that some solutions will be found by this House. Let us not let them down. So let that meeting happen. They will, of course, be attending that particular meeting. And I believe if all the stakeholders are brought on the same table, we should be able to fashion a wonderful way forward. Yes, Honorable Senator.
Thank you for that direction, Chair. My last request is that you allow me to table the petitions that we have received. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
That will be the basis of that meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make some brief comments on the statement brought by the distinguished senator from Marsabit, the Honorable Mohamed Chute. Mr. Speaker, this issue of vaccines is something which is very dear to some of us. It is a big lesson that all of us must learn, that whenever you plan for anything, you must be able to get the buy-in of the professionals. There was a lot of hula baloo, including even myself, saying clearly that my cows will not be vaccinated. You'll excuse my speech today because I have a small disability in my mouth, but I'll attempt to maybe put my message across. The issue of vaccine is something which is very, very important. And what we've learned during the entire exercise, although I can still stand here very strongly and say I never allowed my cows to be vaccinated, there was a huge disconnect between the DVS and the county government in regards to passing the information on the vaccines which were coming out, mostly which were FMD. Mr. Speaker, this House has been set up to defend devolution. And when you see that there's a function that is supposed to be carried out by the county government, but the national government is the one which is raising so much hullabaloo on it, then we in this house must be very, very careful so that we do not lose our functions, especially for our county governments. It is imperative, Mr. Speaker, that Dr. Alan Nasangele, who is the DVS, come before the Agricultural Committee to be able to provide full information on the FMD vaccines. I remember one day I was having a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary, the new Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, and he said something which was very important to me. He said that if these drugs or these vaccines are to be imported, there has to be a demonstration that from the country which they are being imported from, they are being used by those animals. Later on, when I continued talking to him, he insisted that these vaccines are produced locally, they are manufactured locally by Kevivapi. So it is important that our county governments, very, very important, that our county government develop extension workers who can then be able to educate livestock farmers on what, on the policy of the Ministry of Agriculture when it comes to the issue of vaccination, and also on the kind of vaccines which were being carried out. I inquired heavily on this matter, and this is why I'm so passionate about the issue of livestock. And I was told that the type of vaccines which were going to be rolled out were two of them. One is FMD, and the other one was a PPR, which was mostly for the sheep and goat. The problem, and this is where we go wrong in this country, the problem is lack of communication, proper communication, such that you don't get a buy-in from the professionals. So I appreciate Senator Chute for raising this matter, so that we can be clear. If indeed Kevivapi are the ones who produce these vaccines, it will be important for the health committee to be able to go in to Kevivapi facilities, see the entire process. Because, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot which is being discussed worldwide about the issue of vaccines. When you hear Bill Gates saying that these cows need to be vaccinated so that they stop fatting, it worries us. So really, for us, it is imperative that we are educated. And now, our county government must take their role seriously. Earlier on, Mr. Speaker, we're in the Health Committee, and we're looking at the budget of the Health Committee. And when we're going through the budget of the Health, of the Ministry of Health, you realize that there's a presidential directive that has directed the Ministry of Health to be able to build sub-county health centers. When you look at the Schedule 4 of the Constitution, that is a function for county governments. And one of the things that was a bit vexing is the fact that one county, Western Gishu County, was being allocated 700 million when my own county of Narok is getting zero. So really, we just have to very selfishly guard devolution and protect devolution. So this issue of vaccine, Mr. Speaker, it is something that the Council of Governors should have taken over. Because even if the DVS is the one that coordinates, but the implementation is carried out by the county councils, by the county governments. So when farmers are saying, what is happening? And even us who are their ombudspersons cannot be able to tell them that this is what is going on, then our communication leads a lot to be desired and must change. So it's important to actually note that currently as a country we do not have any foreign FMD manufacturer registered in this country. So if indeed we are dealing with the issue of FMD, we now have to dwell deeper into the issues of the borders. Because if we take care of our cows in country, what about the cows and sheep and goat that come from our neighboring country, Somalia? What about the cows and sheep and goat that come from Ethiopia? What about the ones that come from Tanzania? So these are things that all of us must really be alive to. So I hope that when the Committee on Agriculture is going to be investigating the issues that Senator Chuta has raised here, it can actually visit Kevivapi. And I hope that also that Dr. Alan Asegele, the DVS, can pull up his socks and issue out communication, sensitize the professionals, so that when these professionals are going into the field, they can be able to educate our people. Finally, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of fake parasites, a lot of fake animal vaccines in this country. You will find that nowadays, people have moved away from the traditional dips where they used to be able to, put the parasite in so that it can be able to kill all the ticks, the blue tick that is affecting the cows. I think it's about time now that the county government start rehabilitating the old dips so that we can control these diseases. These pumps which are being sold in the market nowadays, some of them are from China, some of them are being made from any other part of the world. You come, you use them, they are not even effective. The control of the parasites is also not being controlled effectively. So the DVS must actually now take charge to see that we can be able to control these diseases, animal diseases in this country. We cannot survive without livestock. I'm sure Mheshimiwa Chute cannot survive without the sheep. I was in Marsabit once, and there were like almost 10,000 sheep being taken care of by one person, and goats. Neither can I survive without the cows. So this is something that it's important for us to work together to know what is our capacity. I like that question. How much can we produce locally? And since this is a function of county governments, can we then now talk to Kevivapi to be able to set up stations across the counties so that even it can be able to buy in and get the approval from the farmers. So this is a very good statement, quite timely, and I hope that all of us, including myself, when we get the report from the Committee of Agriculture, we can be convinced maybe to accept for our cows to be vaccinated. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Veronica Ndwati.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support the statement that has been brought to this House by Senator Mohammed Said Chute, the Senator for Marsabit County, on the foreign nationals working in Kenya's informal business sector. Honorable Speaker, at the very onset, it's important to note that Kenya has an open visa issuance system where it has encouraged many visitors from across different countries, from the neighborhood, from within the African continent to visit our nation. However, Honorable Speaker, the number of foreign nationals that are working in the informal business sector has fundamentally increased. And Honorable Speaker, as you are very aware, every county and even the national government is grappling with how to create jobs for the young people within the Republic of Kenya. So we have jobs like saloon work, hawking, and very small scale enterprises being done now by foreign nationals who are not Kenyans. In a very ideal situation, Honorable Speaker, even foreigners should help to grow the economy. However, there is a balance that needs to be struck and a framework that needs to be developed so that even foreign nationals, if they are allowed to work here, then they fall within the framework, the legal framework that is set by the nation. Why do I say so? Because, Honorable Speaker, if you track down Kenyans who are in other countries, in the neighboring countries, in Tanzania, in Uganda, you track them in Zambia, in Congo, in South Africa, every jurisdiction and every nation is pushing that rules are implemented on immigration, such that if you find the Kenyans who are in South Africa, they would have to make certain applications to be allowed to work within South Africa. Until we have developed a framework within the AU that enables the nationals to crisscross the countries and remove the boundaries, and we make a system like what we have as a Schengen visa, it becomes very difficult, Honorable Speaker, when one country has then opened its boundaries and the rest of the countries around that nation have equally not opened those boundaries and allowed the nationals to work. So that the request by Senator Mohammed Said Chute that we take stock of the number of foreigners who are working, especially the target being in the Kenya's informal business sector, where maybe the Kenyans should first be given priority, then we need to take stock and see whether we are having a proper balance of trade between our nation and other nations. The way other nationals come in here and they are working in the business sector, small-scale businesses, are Kenyans able to work the same way? For instance, in DRC, are they able to work like that? In Somalia, are they able to work like that? In Sudan, in Egypt, and across the continent, and even across the seas, in Europe, in US, you will find every nation has its own structure and system. So I want to support this statement, especially because we must ensure that our young people who are looking for jobs, looking for opportunities within the small-scale business enterprises, and within that sector, the macroeconomy sector, they are not cut off by the foreign nationals that have to work. So I support this statement that the minister or the cabinet secretary should come and account to the House on the number of foreign nationals who could be working within Kenya and the existing labor and immigration policies that need to be implemented, and that data should now be considered with the Kenyans who are working abroad to see whether we are getting complementarity in terms of application of the immigration laws and policies. So, Honorable Speaker, I support this, and I also support that every foreigner who's working in Kenya must definitely do so when they are licensed within the special sectors that they should be working in, and that even the taxation is able to net the benefit that they are receiving from the Kenyan economy goes back to equally support the infrastructure within which they are trading. What is the taxation regime that is being applied to the foreign nationals when they are earning in Kenya? And are they keeping to the labor laws? Or are they using the visitor's visa to work, gainfully earn money from Kenya, and go back to the other countries without maybe even paying the taxes that are required to be paid within Kenya? So I support this, and I hope that once this token audit is taken by the CS and a report is presented to this House by the committee, the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations, I would also have hoped that the Standing Committee on Trade is involved in this matter. Once this report is brought to Parliament or to Senate, then we'll be able to tell whether we have extinguished opportunities that should be due to the young people in Kenya, or whether the foreign nationals are working within the framework that is provided within the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Andrew Mtata.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity. I'll begin by commenting on the statement regarding the vaccination or the much hyped vaccination of animals. Clearly, we're dealing with something that was not ordinary and normal. Vaccination of animals has not been a new thing in this country. Animals are vaccinated and are usually handled by departments. But a nationwide one-time vaccination of animals has never happened in this country unless where we have got quarantines. And the quarantines are not new. Towns like Karatina are corruptions of the word quarantine, because they used to be major quarantine centers. And so, when we came up in this particular state, I would like the statement to really get out of where we are being persuaded to go and tell us what was the emergency that required the head of state to personally take up and run with this particular vaccination program. What were the intentions? What were the expected outcomes? Because it was totally out of the ordinary. We shall have periodic vaccinations when there are outbreaks of diseases and what have you. But I cannot recollect a day when there was vaccination driven from State House. So that vaccination from State House is the elephant in the room, not just the question that we are whether or not animals will be vaccinated. Even today, animals are being vaccinated. I also would like to support the observations by Senator Olekina that we have got very many fake products on the markets. I don't know how the standardization or the inspection of these products are done, but there are many fake products and many farmers have fallen victim to buying these products and administering to their animals, and they don't get the desired results. Associated with that is the cost of vaccination. Vaccinations have become very expensive, and ordinary farmers, most ordinary farmers cannot afford them. You even found when you have got the county governments, you'll find that county government officials who are employed to serve the public, at times those veterinary officers turn around and charge for their services. Some tell you we have gotten this, we have gotten that. On our own, so we are charging a fee. So we would like to also those kind of things to be looked into, and we be told why would a government employee during office hours performing the duties they are employed to perform add a fee of consideration to the services they are giving. The other thing is qualification of veterinary officers. I had an incident personally where I lost more than 100 goats over a period of about 1 month, depending on veterinary officers in Busia trying to come and intervene, until somebody said, why don't you try somebody, and then they get given all manner of theories what could be happening. They ended up saying it was the climate, that was the climate change was affecting the goats. Now, when I went to Kari Naivasha, I called Kari Naivasha and they told me, can you give us a picture of one of the animals? Just send us a picture by WhatsApp. And when I sent a picture, this fellow said, oh, this is the problem and we must intervene immediately. And they sent somebody from Naivasha to my farm, and in no time, that problem was contained. So what makes me wonder is what kind of veterinary officers do we have in Busia, who of 1 month could not resolve a simple viral infection that required a kind of intervention. So other than fake vaccines, we have fake veterinary officers who are purporting to be doing extension work or helping farmers here and there. So the committee may also want to look at the criteria of employing people to serve in county governments in this very, very critical area. And related to that, the veterinary officers, in terms of animal diseases, we have got the meat inspection officers, an area that is largely neglected, but one that is extremely important, given the current trend whereby you have got transfer of diseases across species from animals to human beings, we need to look at the question of the remuneration, training, and other aspects of equipping meat inspectors to be able to do scientific work when they go out to inspect the meat our people eat. So there are many areas within the animal industry that will go along with because vaccines are about diseases in the industry that need to be looked into. There's a statement on the sheep and SHA. I would have loved to contribute to it, but unfortunately I'm litigating it in court. And I've noticed that a lot of the issues raised here are before court, and maybe the Secretariat might want to guide the committee on how to deal with it, given that some of those issues are being litigated in court. But that being as it is, it's an extremely important case that needs to be looked into about the cost of this platform, and especially in light of the confirmation, I don't say the finding, the confirmation by the Auditor General of things many Kenyans have been saying and complaining about, and of the government not raising a finger. And I would like them to go about, there are 3 funds under the SHA. There's only one fund which is being debated or discussed in the public discourse, and that's the SHA, the Social Health Insurance Fund, the SHIF, Social Health Insurance Fund. There's a fund for primary health care and there's a fund for emergency health care. These 2 funds, in the construction of the Act, you don't see how they are being fed, where they are getting their money. And it's like designed that the money will come from the consolidated fund. Now, when you look at Article 206 of the Constitution, you'll find that all money raised by government is supposed to be deposited in the consolidated fund, except where Parliament excludes that money to go into special funds. So I would like the committee to look into that issue and tell this House, when that act was made by Parliament, and we created a fund, who is not being resourced? The chief. As we are debating and fighting it and whatever, it's designed that it will be funded from premiums, which people will pay. That's okay for setting up a fund in terms of the law. But the 2 other funds do not have a mechanism of feeding them or resourcing them. So where will that money come from? It cannot come from the consolidated fund, because Article 2, Clause 6 is an absolute bar. It says where Parliament sets up a fund, it must also set up a mechanism. Parliament can set up a fund to exclude money from going into the consolidated fund. It does not say that Parliament will set up a fund to draw money from the consolidated fund. And yet, under the SHA arrangement, we have 2 funds designed to get money from the consolidated fund. What is the information? What informs that kind of disregard for the Constitution? And if you go further and look at the Public Finance Management Act, go further and look at the Public Finance Management regulations, you find that they underscore that word, that if a fund is set up, it must be resourced by the legislature. The Parliament must say where the money will come from. So as the committee looks at this particular issue of rather it is SHA, not SHIF. SHIF is just one of the funds. SHA is the act. You have the Social Health Authority Act, which is the umbrella law. You have the Social Health Act, which also creates Social Health Authority, under which the Social Health Insurance Fund is created as one of the 3 funds. And in this particular case, I'm trying to help, I want the committee to focus on these 2 other funds that are lying there, that are hidden in the law, and that are designed to get money from the consolidated fund. How that will be done, I don't know. And I hope it will not be considered that they are what we would call, which are anticipated under Article 223 of the Constitution, where we have got unforeseen circumstances, where then a supplementary budget can be made to provide money to unforeseen circumstances. I hope those two funds are not placed there as unforeseen circumstances that will be used to draw money from the consolidated fund. The question of transport, the statement by Professor Jenda, Port Victoria, not Port Victoria, in Kisumu, the Kisumu port. I'm sorry to have used the word Port Victoria because, you know, Busia has got a lake and Port Victoria was in Busia, not in Kisumu. So I'm a bit confused there, but Professor raises a very important point. In terms of the Kenyan economy as a transit economy, our economy is largely a transit economy. If you look at what we call the economy of Kenya today, is where the Uganda Railway passed. The railway passed from Mombasa going to Uganda. That's why we have what you call the Kenyan economy today. So that corridor is very important. When you look at the traffic on that road, on our roads, the most common vehicle is the trailer, carrying goods into the hinterland or carrying empty containers from the hinterland back to the coast. Kenya's place of advantage is being challenged by the emergence of Tanzania, the ports in Tanzania. We should also wake up and look at the fact that the Tanzanian territory is largely flat and is easier to transport across. But the Kenyan territory is a bit steep. You have to cross the Rift Valley, you have to go, and when you go to the Ugandan side, it becomes a bit steep. So we need to look at how do we expand our infrastructure. The standard gauge railway, the meter gauge railway, and the roads. We should not neglect the roads. We should have a deliberate move to dual the road from Mombasa to Nairobi to Nakuru, and then branching off to Kisumu and to Eldoret, then to Busia from Kisumu, and to Malaba from Eldoret, so that we can preserve our comparative advantage over.
Senator Mtata, due to time, I would have to ask you to conclude so that we can give the other two senators who want to speak on the statements.
I'm well guided.
An opportunity, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So that by dualing these roads, we continue giving, we invest in efficiency to be able to compete with the natural terrain that Tanzania has. We have got this other road that goes through Namanga. If you look at the Kenyan side, the road funded by the same funder, the Tanzanian side, the road is wider, the road is smoother, the road has got no potholes. On the Kenyan side, the road is already breaking up, the road is narrower. Who cast us? Why are we having this? So let us invest in this infrastructure, knowing that our country cannot even produce enough food. We provide on the service industry. We must also go back and focus on the LAPSET. Open up the northern corridor so that we can have another artery of business from Lamu, going all the way and opening up to those sides of Somalia. So let us take that statement very, very seriously, knowing that with the emergence of strong economies in the East Central Africa, with them also manufacturing things that we have been manufacturing in Kenya, our lifeline might remain in us being to transport things affordably, cheaply, and of course the corruption on our roads. We have to crack down, we have to eliminate corruption, we have to make sure that the non-tariff barriers to transporting through Kenya, insecurity and what have you, goods being stolen, are taken out. The government should promote the establishment of proper garages along the corridors so that when trucks fall down, they're able to be serviced. And in Busia, there's a big piece of land in a place called Elechom, behind, just transversing the border, it's about 300 acres. the government should consider putting up a trailer city on that piece of land so that we don't have congestion on our sides. Trucks can drive without non-stop, they get there, then all the procurement can be done, and they simply cross over to Uganda instead of having our roads cluttered with congestion and what have you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, I support the motions I've commented on.
Senator Hezena.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to contribute to the statement by Senator for Marsabit County, Senator Chute, on the ongoing livestock vaccination program in the country. Mr. Speaker, we know that about 22 million livestock exist in Kenya, and about 9 million Kenyan citizens identify themselves as pastoralists. And about 4 million of these citizens fully and entirely and solely depend on pastoralism as a means of livelihood. And therefore, when we talk about mass livestock vaccination, without making it clear on what diseases, specific diseases, we are vaccinating our livestock against, that directly endangers the existence of this pastoralist. And we are talking about a threat to about 4 million Kenyans. That's a huge percentage. Mr. Speaker, there has never been a public report that we are aware of what this livestock is being vaccinated against. Diseases have not been specified, and I like that the statement also talks about the time outline, on outline of the timeline on how long it will take to vaccinate about 22 heads of cattle. And it is important to have that report or answers to those questions, because we know that at no point do you find huge number of our livestock accumulated in one place. The very important thing to note about pastoralism is that most of us are nomadic pastoralists, and we move our livestock from places to places. In Samburu, we have something called laleta, where they are like manyatas where livestock is put for a certain period of time. And a lot of times we also put our livestock in such manyatas away from where the citizens live in order to protect them from external threats and banditry. It is important also to tell us whether there was sufficient public participation done in these pastoralist counties, and if our people are aware that the vaccination is going to be conducted, and also the importance of why these cows must be vaccinated, and also a clear outline on other issues. If at all there are no diseases affecting these livestock, and why, because I have had informations flying about that they are being vaccinated to increase the output and the quantity or kilograms of beef that is going to be produced by this livestock. How are people going to directly benefit from the proceeds of selling this beef? Because we know that a lot of this beef is taken to Kenya Meat Commission. What is the commission doing to directly benefit our people from the increased beef output that is going to happen? Secondly, if we have foreign players, be it sponsors or partners or shareholders in this whole process, what is their main interest? And is this program targeting a special breed or hybrid of livestock, or is it also targeting our local breeds like the Boran cow, which most of our people keep up in the north? We know that most of these pastoralist communities and this livestock, the 22 million livestock, a good percentage of it, more than half of it, more than 50% of it is concentrated in the northern counties, which is the ASAL areas in the country. It is also important to note, Mr. Speaker, that most of our people being illiterate, they need to be sufficient time for public participation among these communities, and leadership need to be involved. We need to know. That is why these questions are very valid and they come in timely. I support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Daniel Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me start where Senator Zena ends. For a long time, and Kenya has a history, we've never had such an operation as a massive vaccination to animals. For vaccination to be, you must be controlling a certain identified disease, an outbreak. Just like for human beings, COVID-19 did happen. And therefore, you can't just wake up and vaccinate human beings or vaccinate animals without, a scientific advice. And for that matter, Mr. Speaker, there has been an outcry and many farmers did not cooperate. You can also not vaccinate by force, that you force every farmer. You persuade, you give reasons, and again also the professional bodies must completely advise, and therefore I do support that statement. And on the matter of SHA, the request by Senator Kavindo, Senator for Machakos, Mr. Speaker, this SHA and SHIF issues, and previously we had NHIF, has brought a lot of issues, and all that complaints cannot be for no reason. Mr. Speaker, there are issues as to private individuals running public money. There are issues of tendering processes, of which there is a law which controls that in this country. There is an issue of a consortium awarded and the cost of the award. And also, when you compare what happens to NHIF, we want to say that the thieves of NHIF are known. The criminals in NHIF are known. What has the government done to prosecute and recover monies stolen through NHIF? The reason the government has done nothing is because the people who did that were friendly to the government, and some of them are also now in SHA and SHIF. And therefore, it is a problem if the current government is totally unable to sort out. Kenyans can sort it out in the elections, because at the time Kenyans make decisions as to how they want to be governed. There are issues of signatories to the account and the contract agreement explaining why there is transfer of funds to an escrow account on a daily or weekly basis. You know, money is raised from the public and it is sent away outside the country. And again also, in the contract agreement, Kenya shillings 7 billion set aside for training. Who are you supporting? Who are you training? How did you make that assessment that you need 7 billion to train? What are you training for? Because the staff who used to operate NHIF are the same staff employed. Have you employed new members of staff? And therefore, the whole matter is very controversial, and there's a need for the minister or the cabinet secretary in charge of health to come and highlight all these things to the public so that public can stop suffering. We as members are paid 33,000 every month to go and assist our constituents. We still have to go to our pockets to get people released from the hospitals, and therefore the matter of SHA and SHIF should be sorted out the fastest time possible. And Mr. Speaker, although I do not have a PhD in matters relating to animal husbandry, it is important that Kenyans be explained properly simple concepts so that they can do a buy-in and there be public participation before we do massive vaccination to animals. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 8, the County Government's Revenue Raising Process Bill, National Assembly Bills number 11 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the process to be followed by county governments in the exercise of their power under Articles 209 and 210 of the Constitution to impose, vary, or waive taxes, fees, levies, and other charges, to establish the Interagency Transitional Committee and for connected purposes. Order number 9, the Business Laws Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 51 of 2024, first reading. a bill for an act of parliament to amend various laws and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Public Fundraising Appeals Bill, Senate Bills number 36 of 2024, second reading, division.
We are going to rearrange the order paper and defer order number 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Next order.
Order number 16, motion, consideration of the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the 2025 budget policy statement. Resumption of debate.
Senator Methu is not here. Senator Manzo, you want to contribute to the report on the Standing Committee on Finance? Okay.
Not contributed, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on the policy statement, which informs the law relating to budgeting and the finance bills. Mr. Speaker, I would like to state that having a policy statement is very important because it gives the grounds as to how we are going to handle the matters thereafter, and how the finances are going to be dealt with. The Senate mainly deals with what is going to be devolved, Mr. Speaker, and I want to state that devolution has gone through a lot of challenges. Although the monies going to the counties have been reported not absorbed as quickly as it should be, Mr. Speaker, some of the challenges need to be noted as to why governors are not absorbing all the monies in good time. Is it procurement challenges, or what challenges they are going through? We expect the monies which have given the governors, which is not even a lot of money, which should actually be increased, has not been absorbed quickly, and yet when you go to the counties, you can see undone roads, you can see water systems which are still not being connected. Definitely there is a lot of work to be done by the counties which has not been noted at the grassroots level. Therefore, it is important that when we make this statement, policy statement, and go on to implement the finance bill, and go on to do the division of revenue bill, we make sure that counties have good money, and we make sure also the monies are spent as a Senate and spent well. One of the biggest challenges has been corruption, skilled procurements, and again also serious pending bills at the counties and the national level. When you hold money from businessmen and women at the national level and the county level, then the economy stops circulating, and therefore it is important to clear all the pending bills, the ones which have been verified, both the national government and the county government, so that money can be in circulation and these businessmen can be motivated to do more work for the people of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Danson Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to make my contribution on the report of the Senate Finance Committee on the budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, many years ago, when we used to be in the National Assembly, we never had opportunity to interrogate the priorities of government. But the new Public Finance Management Act, which came after we left the other house, has made it clear under Section 35 that a budget policy statement must be brought before the actual estimates are brought. And when this budget policy statement comes, it outlines the priorities that the government or the administration that is in power is supposed to set up, and what we should roughly expect when the actual estimates come with the details of how monies are supposed to be raised and how monies are supposed to be spent. Mr. Speaker, I did not want to be long, but I wanted to mention two things that are not reflected in this budget policy statement. And Mr. Speaker, the budget policy statement estimates that there will be a growth of revenue by about 10%. So that, Mr. Speaker, ordinary revenue is supposed to raise by about 259 billion, which is about 10% of what was raised last year. The surprising thing, Mr. Speaker, is that there is no correspondent growth in the allocation that is supposed to go to county governments. So the question then begs, are county governments inferior to the national government? And the Constitution has given us a very clear answer that these are two levels of government, and none is superior to the other, but both have different functions with different mandates to execute those functions. Mr. Speaker, we have said many times here that the National Treasury seems to be working only for the national government. Because surely if ordinary revenue is rising by 10%, the logical thing is that county governments then should expect a 10% increment. That should be the projection. That should be the allocation. But that is not what is reflected in this budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, that's why I have argued, and I think we need to really push this, that we should have two separate treasuries. When money is collected, it should be split automatically. The percentage that is going to counties must go there, and the percentage that is going to the national government must go there. But this budget policy statement is only serving the purpose of the national treasury. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to interrogate this and ask ourselves, is this budget policy statement actually also helping or recognizing that county governments also need an equivalent amount in terms of projected increment of ordinary revenue? So, Mr. Speaker, I suggest that this bit be looked at afresh. Our mandate as senators is to fight for these county governments, because we have come from a history where the first president of this republic, when he wanted to finish up with Majimbo governments, which were an equivalent of the counties that we have now, what he did was to first of all deal with the Senate, finish up with it by making it come together with the National Assembly. And when they absorbed this, there were no noises going, fighting for resources for the Majimbo governments. Then, Mr. Speaker, the Majimbo governments died a natural death. If that hadn't happened, Mr. Speaker, If that had not occurred those more than 50 years ago, then, Mr. Speaker, we would not be talking of only one trunk road in the entire Tana River County. We would not be talking of segregation in terms of development for the Asal regions, because we would have had our own Majimbo, senators would have been fighting for our own resources, and maybe would be having as good schools as they are in other regions, as a better road network as they are in other regions, title deeds being as available in those our areas as they are in other regions. Because, Mr. Speaker, the segregation and the discrimination that these regions have suffered is because of that decision at that time. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to be very clear that this budget policy statement seems to be favoring only the national government. So if there's 10% increment, the correct thing to do is to also state it very clearly that there will be at least in the minimum an expected 10% increment to the counties. And, Mr. Speaker, the other second thing I wanted to focus on is that in December 2024, the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee identified and delineated and transferred several functions to the county governments. However, the budget policy statement of 2025 that we are debating now does not give any framework for allocating and transferring resources to those functions that were allocated or transferred to county governments. So again, Mr. Speaker, you can see that this budget policy statement is not reflective of the interests of the counties. The thinking in the Treasury, Mr. Speaker, is still only serving the national government. And those listening to me in Kenya, I'm calling for a clear separation of powers. When Kenya Revenue Authority raises money, we should take the money for the national government to a separate treasury from the money that is supposed to be to county governments. If this doesn't happen, Mr. Speaker, this kind of attitude will continue. The Intergovernmental Committee sits down and delineates functions. And they say, okay, these ones we are taking away from national government and we are giving to county, and then there's no funds that follow. What kind of thinking is this? That the budget policy statement is not reflecting the simple principle that funds or resources follow the function. If these functions have been transferred, why isn't there a process or a framework that has been shown clearly in this budget policy statement? I have a lot of respect for the current Treasury Secretary, Honorable Mbadi. And my prayer is that he will not go there and be surrounded by people who think that it was a mistake to create counties. And I want to remind Honorable Mbadi that he himself ran or intended to run for a county government position as a governor before he came as a nominated member here. So as he sits there, he should rearrange those people who serve in the treasury. We need people who are also pro-devolution, people who will protect devolution. In fact, the Senate should be given an opportunity to nominate people who will be working as advisors in that ministry. Because it seems the people who are presenting this budget policy statement did not consult at all or did not care to hear the views of those of us who are in the devolution family. Mr. Speaker, yesterday there was a lot of hullabaloo from another member of the devolution family, the County Assembly's Forum. And they were raising issues because some of the promises that were given in terms of the financial emoluments that they expected are not reflected in this budget policy statement, and which means they are not priorities. They are not strategies that have been prioritized. And those promises to help our MCAs who have been degraded from their job positions they used to have in the previous election, the previous government. You know, an MCA who was serving in the last election before this one was earning better than the MCA who is earning now. And we cannot celebrate when we see another member of the devolution family suffering. It is our responsibility to raise these issues and continue raising them. Why? Because when you look at that treasury, Mr. Speaker, that treasury is not friendly to devolution. That treasury thinks that our county assembly forum should not be given any more money. That treasury thinks that the devolution family is a drain on the treasury. They don't think that when you increase funds or you take the funds to follow the function, they don't think that it's an investment in this country. They think it is better to add more, money to security, more money to international relations, but they don't think it's important to send money to the devolution family. Mr. Speaker, we must call out Treasury for what it is. Mr. Speaker, I fully support this report by our very able Finance Committee under the leadership of Captain Oroba, Senator for Mandera. And we thank them because they have flagged out these issues. These issues are on record. And my own addition would have been that we need now to deliberately populate that treasury with people who think devolution is important. That treasury needs to be drained, Mr. Speaker. That treasury and the workers there who have grown up there thinking that counties are not important, counties are a nuisance, members of this devolution family are not important. Mr. Speaker, that treasury needs to be drained. You cannot devolve functions and then you don't give money to the governors to execute those functions. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. There being no other senator wanting to contribute, I will ask the mover to reply. Is it Senator Boni Kalwale or Senator Tabitha? Vice Chair, okay. Vice Chair, Budget.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I really want to start by appreciating all colleagues, all senators that have given their views and remarks on the issue of BPS. Mr. Speaker, as a reply, I want to mention that where we've come from as far as BPS is concerned, it's what we do every year. It has a timeline, an issue that as a committee we've also been able to raise on the timeline that is given by 15th of February, which of course has not been very appropriate, but I'm happy because this is an issue that is before the committee. We've been deliberating on it for amendments so that more time is given as far as matters budget are concerned, Mr. Speaker. That was just a mention because I know it's an issue that most colleagues have raised, because matters budget is, these are matters that each and every committee has to look at, and time has been a very key factor, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, PBS being a government policy document which sets out the broad strategies and priorities and also policies and goals which guides the national government and the county governments as far as preparation of budgets are concerned. And this is a very important process at all levels, both national and county government, and also as parliament. It's a mandate that we really undertake. It contains the assessment of the current state of the economy, Mr. Speaker, including the macro forecast as well as the priorities of the government, current pillars, growth and strategy directions, the financial outlook, which also concerns government revenues, expenditures, borrowing for the next financial year and over the medium term. And when I talk about borrowing, Mr. Speaker, this is where, this is really where we need to have a deeper discussion when it comes to the issue of borrowing, Mr. Speaker. Today, Mr. Speaker, when we also had the CS for finance and we touched on the issues of this particular borrowing, you realize even as we support counties and during this budget process, this funds that we budget, some of the monies also come from what has been borrowed. The loans that bring about the issue of both domestic borrowing and external borrowing, Mr. Speaker. So it's a matter that we need to be privy of, because then that borrowing plays a very big role as far as these budgets are concerned, Mr. Speaker. And that's why as a committee we emphasize on the timelines for the system that is supposed to maximize on the on-source revenue collection by the county governments, as much as we support county increments, but also we should be able to push for more on-source revenue at the county levels. The proposed expenditure limits for the national government includes those for parliament and the judiciary, and the indicative transfers of county governments, as I've earlier said, that is through the division of revenue. The fiscal responsibility principles and financial objectives over the medium term, which includes limits on the total debt, Mr. Speaker. As I continue, we could not have tabled this report, of course, Mr. Speaker, without engaging our stakeholders. And allow at this point I also mention our stakeholders and really thank them for their massive submissions and our intense discussions that we had. That is starting with the CRA, Commission of Revenue Allocation, COG, led by the good governor of Wajir, Institute of Certified Accountants, that is ISPAC. We had the Budgeti Hub, the County Assemblies Forum, the Institute of Public Finance, the HENET, the Institute of Economic Affairs, Okoa Uchumi, the 13 constitutional commissions and independent offices, and members of the public, that is Mr. Kevin Ronyo, Mr. Peter Joroge, and Mr. Elid Matindi. And Mr. Speaker, these are stakeholders that we really walked a journey with in the different aspects of our committee and the different issues that we tackle. Mr. Speaker, the theme for the 2025 PBS is consolidating gains under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda for an inclusive green growth. The PBS, Mr. Speaker, does envision the global economic growth performance at 3.2%, Mr. Speaker, was at 2024, with projections of 3.3 for this year, 2025-2026. The economic growth is developing economies, which is projected to stabilize at 4.2% in both 2024 and 2025. The National Treasury, Mr. Speaker, estimates the economy to grow by 4.6 in 2024, down from 5.6 in 2023, with projections of 5.3%, both in 2025 and 2026. Mr. Speaker, for the first half of 2024-2025, revenue performance fell short of 1.4 billion by 107 billion as at December last year, with a collection of 1.3 billion. This was majorly occasioned by underperformance of the ordinary revenue to a tune of 93.3 billion. The 2025 PBS then proposed several initiatives to be able to improve revenue collection and also maximize the revenue collection, which includes the operationalization of the national tax. I don't know why that is keeping me today. And the medium-term revenue strategy of 2024 and 2026-2027, strengthening tax administration, broadening the tax base, reducing tax expenditures, leveraging on technology to modernize tax processes, and closing revenue loopholes, improving tax system efficiency, and a focus on non-tax revenue that MDAs can generate through public services. Mr. Speaker, the government, the PBS overall budget for financial year 25-26 is 4.3 billion, which is 9.8% above the approved expenditure in supplementary 1 for 2024-2025. You realize the previous allocation for division of revenue to the counties is 387.7 billion. From our last year proposal of around 410, which was occasioned by the demonstrations that took place on refusal for the finance bill then, and this prompted that this budget then for the county, the allocation for the county was then affected, which now reduced to the 387.7, Mr. Speaker. The shareable revenue is expected to grow from a projected 2.5 billion at the end of 2024-2025 to 2.8 for financial year 25-26. Mr. Speaker, then this is a growth. And then I listened to my good friend, Senator Mungatana, when he talked about there's an increment as far as revenue is projected, then the same should reciprocate when it comes to the county allocation, Mr. Speaker. What we have proposed as a committee, Mr. Speaker, is an increase from the 387.7 to 465 in total to the county government. And if I would just mention on how we were able to come up with this particular figure, Mr. Speaker, you note that we have increments that then affect the county government. One of those increments is the housing levy deduction, which totals to about 4.1 billion, and that is supposed to be taken care by the county governments. The enhanced contribution to NSSF, Mr. Speaker, which totaled to 6 billion. Matching allocation to the KIPES project, and that actually is only to the 18 counties, which is at 11.8 billion. CHPs, our very dear health promoters out there, their budget is 3.23 billion. This is the responsibility of the county, Mr. Speaker. Annual wage increment, which is normally about 10%, amounts to 6.3 billion, which cuts across the 47 counties. Basic salary increment for doctors, CBA, for 2017, and which amounts to about 3.5 billion, which totals to, all those total to 34.9 billion, Mr. Speaker. These are some of the issues we had raised last time when we actually increased the division of revenue figures. And now with the sums that I've just read out, they justify the increment to go up to 365 billion. It is further expected, Mr. Speaker, also, sharing of the equitable share among counties for the next financial year shall be using the proposed fourth formula basis, which I know is a very critical issue that we very highly participate, and in full recognition of the physical impacts of the new formula from previous years, the committee has provided for an additional 14 billion to cushion all countries from the transitional effects of the new basis. So this 14 billion, including the 34.9 billion, including the previous amount of the 387 allocation 0.7, will be able to give us the 467, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in our recommendations as a committee, we recommended that the county equitable share for this financial year should be the 465. The national government equitable share should be 2.3. Equalization fund, Mr. Speaker, this is a fund that as a committee we've gone further and really asked that the Treasury allocates or disperse the remaining 10 billion. This money actually does not increase, Mr. Speaker. It's money that was allocated, some has been dispersed, and the other money, the other balance is actually just pending. These are issues that can come to closure when the Treasury will allocate these particular budgets, so that the main focus of what the equalization fund was to achieve, then we'll be able to achieve, because it was really to touch on critical issues, one of them being health, Mr. Speaker. And we know the issues of health, the way they are so sensitive. So equalization fund 10 billion is what we proposed as a committee, so that we can be able to see that the fund meets its goals. Additional allocation to counties, 69.8 billion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last year, when I sat in the mediation committee on county additional allocations, we were not able to conclude because of the timelines. And Mr. Speaker, one critical issue that brought about forth and back, and I want to mention to Senator Mungatana, I heard him talk about the CS Treasury. CS Treasury, when he appeared before our committee today, was able to categorically state that he is not happy with the wrangles that are there between the National Assembly and the county governments, Mr. Speaker. Because as Senate, we fully support the county governments as far as the issue of RMLF is concerned. Today, even as we speak, the bill for county additional allocation that has been proposed by the National Assembly has scrapped off RMLF completely. Our bill on our side, we have not scrapped off, because these roads also are belong to the counties, and counties need to improve these particular roads. There's nothing wrong with them having their funds. The funds for county headquarters have also been scrapped off by that bill. But of course, for where we sit as a committee, we understand the need for counties to be able to come to a closure as far as those issues are concerned for the county, there's 5 county headquarters. So you find there's forth and back. I agree that we should also be part of the budget process as a house. This should not just be the responsibility of the National Assembly alone. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we end up having forth and back. Forth and back. And then who suffers? The mwananchi suffers. There's the saying in Swahili, wakati fahari wawili wanapigana nyasi ndio inaumia, Mr. Speaker. I hope I've said it correctly. And it is a high time that when it comes to these budgetary issues, the funds for the devolved functions should just be left for devolved functions. We had to query a whopping 29 billion, Mr. Speaker, on the health sector that has been transferred to the Ministry of Health directly, and these are functions for the county government. Improvement of different facilities, Mr. Speaker. These are monies that we should be able to see being budgeted for all the staff, all the medical staff. The legacy that should be left for the Ministry of Health when it comes to matters of health should not be the beautiful buildings which are well painted, well structured. It should be the personnel. What is the point of getting into a very smart, well-equipped hospital, And I wonder who knows when they'll be sick. Who knows when they'll need to get to hospital. Who knows? Is there a calendar? Is there a date? Is there, a specific timeline? No one knows. The most important theme, the most in this budgeting, we should be able to see that the personnel, the staff are supported by their remunerations being paid and being paid on time. The issues of us seeing doctors, health workers, each and every week they're on strike. And up and including today, Mr. Speaker, they still approach the gates of Parliament. How can we be discussing billions? Billions. Yet the medical staff remunerations are still due or are still pending. Gratuity issues that you look at, how much budget is needed. Where I sit today also in the health committee, we were looking at how much is needed to pay the UHC workers. And remember, these workers were the ones who are on the front line during the time of COVID, when you and me were told to lock ourselves in the house, keep distance, to be safe. But they were bold enough to be on the front line, to be able to stand for this country, Mr. Speaker. And the budget that is needed to meet what they keep on carrying placards every day is just about 4 billion, Mr. Speaker. It's about just 4 billion. I'm happy I've seen the budget that even the CS was able to state that medical practitioners, the 2017 CBA was agreed, this money was budgeted for, because it's budgeted for actually in this financial year about 1.7 billion and all that. But you see, when it comes to the medical space, the medical industry, there should not be a separation of this cadre of a medical worker or this cadre. They are all important and they play key roles in this country. So when it comes to these budgets, it should be fair. Let the counties get what they need to get. The issue of on-source, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, it's an issue that also the county governments should be able to speed up so that we have a uniform system that helps collect on-source revenue. We stop depending on the national government. We are concerned. I know there was a time the president proposed a team to be able to look at the audit issues as far as debt is concerned. Politics led the day when that proposal came. But I'm sure, and as the minister mentioned today, that the Auditor General Office will be able to look into this so that Kenyans will be able to know what is the debt, to what level it is, and also how to reduce on this debt so as to improve on our own source revenue. And I want to encourage governors and county governments, as much as Senate fights for you for more allocation, additional allocation, work on reducing your pending bills. It is so painful as we push for more funding to the counties, but the pending bills are increasing each and every year. What are we doing to our Kenyans? The cry that is out there, Mr. Speaker, for Kenyans is the economy, is a situation that we are, that is currently in place because money is not moving. If these bills cannot be sorted, Mr. Speaker, then of course our people will continue, crying. We look at the domestic borrowing versus the external borrowing. We are at 65% and 35% borrowing from externals. What are we doing to the private sector? I also noticed, Mr. Speaker, that even the CBK rates for the bank are not being fully implemented by all the banks. Where do we leave the private sector, Mr. Speaker? We cannot all fit within the space of the government sector. The private sector plays a very key role. So these are some of the issues, Mr. Speaker. And all said, I really want to appreciate my committee members led by my very good chair, Captain Ali Oroba, Senior Boni Halwale, Doctor, Senator Faki, Senator Shakila, Senator SC, Mariam, and Senator Onyonka, because these are issues that we've deliberated very highly as a committee. And I want also to appreciate the Secretariat led by Gitonga, Beverly, Lucy, and the team, Kioko, all the team that we work very closely to ensure that we are able to give a good report. And in those many and few remarks, I beg to reply and request that the putting of the question be deferred to a later day pursuant to Standing Order 66-3.
Very well, it's deferred. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, consideration of the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the 2025 medium-term debt management strategy.
Senator Boni Kalwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to move the report of the Senate Finance Committee on the medium-term debt management strategy for the year 2025. Mr. Speaker, the Senate adopts this report as contained herein, and as we do so, Mr. Speaker, it's good for us to bring it to the attention of the House that the medium-term debt management strategy is pursuant to Standing Order, pursuant to Section 33 of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 41 2A. The MTDS provides a framework for informed decision-making on public borrowing and debt management. It gives and guides the national government in structuring the debt portfolio to minimize costs and risks while ensuring sustainability and supporting the government of the domestic debt market. Mr. Speaker, the MTDS was tabled in Parliament on 13th of February 2025 and subsequently committed to the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget for consideration. Its submission aligns with Section 331 of the Public Finance Act 2012, which mandates the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance to submit to Parliament a statement outlining the national government's debt management strategy. It provides information on the following key elements. 1, the stock of public debt as at the date of tabling of the statement. 2, the sources of the loans required by the national government and the nature of the guarantees issued by the national government. And 3, the principal risks associated with these loans and guarantees. Not to mention, Mr. Speaker, number 4, the assumption underpinning the debt management strategy and, of course, an analysis of the sustainability of both actual and potential debt, public debt. The resolution of the House on the report of the medium-term debt management strategy shall serve as a foundation for determining the appropriate limits on proposed domestic and external borrowing. Additionally, it shall inform the approval of the budget policy statement report. Mr. Speaker, the 2025 MTDS outlines the following strategy. A gross financing ratio of 25 to 75 for external and domestic borrowing respectively, and 2, a net financing strategy of 35 to 65 for external and domestic finance respectively. Mr. Speaker, this underscores the continued reliance on domestic market as the primary source of financing for fiscal deficits over the medium term. As at the end of January 2025, the total stock of public and publicly guaranteed debt stood at 11.02 trillion shillings, equivalent, Mr. Speaker, to 65.7% of the GDP, up from 10.58 trillion, which was equivalent to the same 65.7% of the GDP in June 2024. This figure is projected to rise further to 13 trillion by June 2027. Consequently, debt servicing costs are expected to increase to 1.97 trillion by June 2025 and further to 2.4 trillion by June 2027. Additionally, debt service payments, including interest and redemption payments, are projected to remain elevated, averaging 60% of the total income. This underscores the tightening fiscal space and highlights the urgent need for a robust debt management strategy aimed at minimizing costs and mitigating the risk associated with high debt distress levels. Mr. Speaker, in reviewing the 2025 MTDS, my committee engaged with the key stakeholders, including the Commission on Revenue Allocation, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, the Council of Governors, the County Assemblies Forum, Budgeti Hub, the Institute of Public Finance, the Institute of Social Accountability, Office of the Auditor General, Okoa Uchumi, Mr. Kelvin Ronyo, and the Institute of Economic Affairs. The committee held a total of 10 sittings while processing this MTDS. Additionally, in adherence to Article 201A of the Constitution, the Senate conducted public participation on the 2025 MTDS through a call for submission of memoranda. Mr. Speaker, sir, arising from these consultative engagements, the committee made several recommendations which included the following. 1, noting that as of June 2024, Kenya's public debt stood at 10.58 trillion, equivalent to 63% in present value. Terms exceeding Public Finance Management Act frameworks of PV to GDP ratio of 55% by 8% points, the National Treasury should submit quarterly reports to Parliament detailing the progress made towards compliance with the set threshold as contained in the Public Finance Management Act. 2, that the National Treasury, Central Bank of Kenya, and Controller Budget should fully automate the withdrawal of debt service payments from the Consolidated Fund by 31st May 2025. And that additionally, an interagency report on the implementation status of these recommendations should be submitted to Parliament 15 days after the 31st of May 2025. 3, that to enhance financial controls, improve accuracy and timelines of public debt statistics, and strengthen decision-making for greater transparency and accountability, the National Treasury should integrate the public debt management system with integrated financial management system, IFMIS, by May 31st, 2025, and submit a report to Parliament within 15 days of implementation. 4, that to enhance transparency and accountability in anticipated increase in domestic borrowing, the National Treasury should within 60 days, 1, establish a working committee to develop criteria for assessing the effective utilization of borrowed funds by ministries, departments, and agencies, and establish the Registrar of Government Securities in accordance with Section 55 of the Public Management Finance Act. And that 2, it should ensure that the debt register records comprehensive details on the utilization of borrowed funds, including specific breakdown of projects financed through the proceeds of infrastructure bonds. E, that the National Treasury should establish a multi-agency committee comprising of representatives from the National Treasury, the Central Bank of Kenya, and the Controller of Budget to review the public debt procurement process and, Madam Speaker, assess the utilization of borrowed funds. The committee should report to the Senate within 60 days. To mitigate the impact of high debt service costs, the National Treasury should ensure efficient resource utilization, prioritize investments in high-impact sectors, and enhance the timely implementation of projects and programs. Allow me, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, to make a few remarks on the financial recommendations that we made as a committee. That the fiscal deficit target for the medium term is approved and set at 4.6% of the GDP for the financial year 2025-2026, and at 3.8% of the GDP for the financial year 2026-2027, and at 3.5% of the GDP for the financial year 2027-2028, in line with the fiscal consolidation path, and that the country's borrowing strategy is approved at 35% for the net external borrowing and 65% for the net domestic borrowing, as contained in the 2025 midterm debt management strategy. Finally, Madam Speaker, I'd like to appreciate stakeholders who appreciated our work and appeared before the committee or submitted memoranda on the 2025 MTDS, and I also appreciate members of the committee on finance and budget for their commitment and dedication to complete the task. I also wish to appreciate the Office of the Speaker and the Office of the Clerk for facilitating the committee in executing its mandate. Lastly, Madam Speaker, I request senators to approve the committee's report on this 2025 MTDS, and before I invite to be seconded, I want to appreciate the arrival of the leader of the youth in the Senate, the distinguished senator from Siaya, Dr. Oburu Dinga, aged 84 years old, welcome to this great meeting. And also, Madam Speaker, I want to welcome back after a 2-week hiatus from the Senate, the leader of the majority. I don't know whether he was reading for a master's at Strathmore College or he was reading for a PhD. I encourage you, if you don't have a PhD, you quickly do so, because some of us who are properly educated, we have decided to profile those who don't have PhDs. Madam Speaker, I wish to invite the Senator for Nairobi nominated, Senator Tabitha Maureen Mutinda, to second this.
Thank you, Senator, but just hold on, Senator Tabitha. And I don't know whether you have now provided all of us who have not achieved the PhD. We hope not, but let me give a communication from the chair on visiting teachers and pupils from Golden Plains Academy, Kitengela in Kajiado County. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting teachers and pupils from Golden Plains Academy, Kitengela in Kajiado County. The delegation comprises 8 teachers and 41 pupils who are in the Senate for a 1-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming to Parliament, visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. And I want to request the Majority Leader, who needs to do some work today, to welcome this school, together with Senator Tabitha, when you take up to support the motion.
I don't know why the majority whip, Madam Speaker, is animated this afternoon, and why he wants to announce to the students that haven't been around for a while. But it's only last week, and I've been coming evenings after class at 5 o'clock, Madam Speaker. So I want to join you in welcoming these pupils and teachers from Golden Plains Academy, Kitengela in Kajiado County. There are 8 teachers and 41 pupils who are in the Senate for 1-day academic exposition. Madam Speaker, I know it's always an interesting time when students get an opportunity to watch the House. It's unfortunate that by the time these students arrived, many of our colleagues have already checked out for the day. But it doesn't mean that they are not working. We have immediately after this wall, there's what is referred to as a Senator's Lounge, where many of our colleagues follow debates from the House, and if there is a need for them to come and respond to something, they walk back into the House. So it doesn't mean that if you see the chairs empty, that it goes without a fact that senators are not around. I can tell you that had you been here at 2:30, the House was nearly full house, Madam Speaker. So I hope they get to interact with the senators, learn, and get to understand what's happening. What the minority whip was doing, just to inform them of the procedure that we're going through, was moving actually a motion. A committee, that is a committee which he sits in, Committee on Budget and Finance, has sat down, considered the report of Kenya's debt situation from the Treasury, and now they are sending a report back to the House. So what he's doing is called moving a report, after which it will be seconded and tabled before the House for debate, after which members will vote. So that's one of the many things that we do in this particular House. I wish them well in their studies, Mr. Speaker, because these are our leaders of our country presently and in the future. And for those who want to pursue a future in leadership, political leadership in this country, Madam Speaker, they're welcome to do so. This is a very fulfilling profession. Never mind all the difficulties that come with it. I wish you well in all that you're up to and in your journey back to Kajiado. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Majority Leader Senator Aaron Cheriot, Kericho County. I want to also give another communication from the chair on visiting teachers and students from Diaine Girls Secondary School, Mokoreni constituency in Nyeri County. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery This afternoon, we're visiting teachers and students from Diaine Girls Secondary School in Mukurweini constituency, Nyeri County. The delegation comprises 2 teachers and 36 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. I will request Senator Tabitha, when she's seconding this motion, to first acknowledge and receive those students from Diaine Girls Secondary School, Mukurweini constituency in Nyeri County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I take this opportunity to welcome the students from Nyeri County, that is Diaine Girls Secondary School, and also not forgetting the other school from Kitengela. One thing that makes you all to be on that level of education is because you're all students. I always say that education is the only thing that nobody will ever take it away from you. The knowledge and the skills that you gain while in school are very important. Nobody will take that from you. And I always encourage students, enjoy your moment in your learning institutions, because you're not going to be in high school and in primary throughout your life. Our work is to legislate, to represent, and to oversight. We have a speaker. As we speak right now, we have Madam Speaker, who's like the principal or the head mistress of the institution. We have the leadership of the house, the way you have deans in school. And we sit as members. So it's like another institution which has laws that we adhere to, the same way you have laws. So I will encourage you to enjoy your studies. The sky is the limit. You can as well be here today. The people of, the students of Kajiado County, I actually sit next to your senator, but he had to leave for some other work. The students of Nyeri County, behind sits the senator of Nyeri County. I'll pass my regards. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that opportunity. I take this now opportunity to second my colleague, Dr. Senior Boni Alale, on the issue of the medium-term strategy that we as a committee have really deliberated on it. And I'm happy to say that the CS, Honorable Badi, was able to appear before the committee today. And we were able to get into some of the issues definitely pertaining the issue of debt, which I think when I was doing my contribution on the BPS, I touched on it because they interrelate. We deal with these two matters of BPS and MTDS concurrently, Madam Speaker. And the issue that we really focused on was to try and understand the increment of the debt as compared to the GDP, which is currently at 65.7. Madam Speaker, this was a concern because last year this was capped at 55.5%. But the Speaker, the Minister, was able to state before the committee that actually this has reduced from 72% to where it is at 65.7% of GDP. It's been a reduction, which has been brought about by strengthening of the Kenya shilling versus the dollar. And this has been able to save us a whopping 24 billion as a country, money that is able to transfer to the schools for capitation, among other budgets, Madam Speaker. The issue that we were also able to raise, as I mentioned earlier, Madam Speaker, was the issue of the domestic borrowing at 65% and the external borrowing at 35%, Madam Speaker, putting in mind the position of the private sector because of the interest rate, bank interest rates at the banks. Madam Speaker, on the issue of debts, we also related on the issue of pending bills, both at the county level and at the national level, Madam Speaker, because we have quite a chunk, and this issue of pending bill, as you know, Madam Speaker, is a thorny issue. We were able to ask the minister the amount of non-performing loans as far as the issue of pending bills are concerned. Kenyans, the way they are suffering, they are not able to pay their loans simply because their supplies have also not been paid. And each and every year, we are budgeting. So we were able to ask the Treasury also, the same thing we also asked the COG to push to reduce the issue of pending bills so that money can be able to circulate. Most people are stuck, most people, business people are actually stuck because of the issue of pending bills, yet services have been rendered or goods have been delivered. The issue of the cash basis versus the accrual basis of accounting is an issue that as a committee we were able to also deliberate on the importance of the accrual accounting system. Because as we speak, like the counties and even the national government has been using the cash basis system, then which brings about the audit issues, Madam Speaker. The issue of the debt, where are we with the debt? How much has been borrowed? How much has been paid? What are the timelines for payment? What are the interest rates? What are the terms and conditions? What was agreed and all that? This needs to come to light. As I said earlier, there was a committee that the President had proposed last year, which brought a lot of politics. But the minister was able to promise the committee that through the Office of the Auditor General, this report should be tabled and we should be able to be more informed on the level of or how much debt has been borrowed, what is expected to be borrowed. Because as we continue doing budgets, Madam Speaker, you know very well, we are prospecting. We do not have the actuals, and hence now the borrowing comes in. But borrowing, looking at it on the positive perspective, then our credibility is positive. Hence, we are able to get the approvals for the loan, or we are able to be supported. But we also need to ensure that we prioritize, as I said earlier, on the human resource capital. If the human resource is demoralized, if the human resource is not paid their dues on time, especially when you look at the health issues on the health sector, then you know the nation is not able to progress and achieve most of its goals as have been said or set as far as the different dockets are concerned, Madam Speaker. So all said, Madam Speaker, I urge the members be able to support our report. And also, because of the timeline issue, as I said earlier, we are behind time as far as the BPS is concerned, as far as the passage of this MTDS is concerned, and I would want to urge colleagues that before the end of this week, through the able leadership of the majority leader, Aaron Cheriot, and our counterpart, Mazayo, to be able to ensure that we pass these two motions. Otherwise, then we are not within the timelines. But I've also informed the House that we are having PFM amendments to be able to increase the timeline, because the time is normally too short, and these are very, very critical issue. And lastly, before I forget, Madam Speaker, just to mention that we've noticed also as a committee that some budgets have been set at the national level, especially on the Ministry of Health. More funding has been able to move, and you look at the specific funding, you realize these are projects that should be done within the county level, Madam Speaker. With all those many and few, I do second.
Thank you very much, Senator Tabitha. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the 2025 Mid-Term Debt Management Strategy laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 12 March 2025. Thank you. I want to now invite the senators to contribute to this motion, beginning with the majority leader, Senator Cheriot Aaron, Kericho County.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very important report that comes from the Committee on Budget and Finance, and it's a pity, Madam Speaker, that it's being moved late in the evening when most members are out. But I hope that each senator gets an opportunity to speak on this particular issue, because this is a very fundamental issue. And personally, Madam Speaker, I've been very, very consistent on my call for a better management of our debt situation as a country. From the days last Parliament, Madam Speaker, when we raised first the nominal figure, I think from 6 to 10, I oppose that move, Madam Speaker, for reasons that I'll speak onto, and why I feel the Budget and Finance Committee, though they have done a good work, can do better on this particular issue, because it's not just a ticking of the box when Treasury lays before the House the debt management strategy that they want to bring before this particular Parliament. We are placed with serious responsibility as a legislature and the institution of accountability, where we can call on the Treasury and ask them, Madam Speaker, to perhaps do better on many areas. This issue of debt is not a very simple issue. It is a serious issue, Madam Speaker, which, if not properly managed, can lead the country into economic collapse. This is a threat that we've lived with for a while. If you take time, Madam Speaker, to read the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, you will see that the issue of debt featured quite prominently. And it is described there as a perfect economic storm, what Kenya finds itself in, that we still are tinkering on or about 70%. I think from the figure that they've given, to be specific here, is that we are currently at actually 65.7% of the GDP, Madam Speaker, which is not a very interesting figure. Remember, when we passed the amendment that I now supported to a percentage, and we explained the justification there in 2023, if I'm not wrong, Madam Speaker, the argument was that that is a more scientific and more accurate than having it in a nominal figure, Madam Speaker, as such that as the economy continues to grow, then you keep your debt at a sustainable level. You know, because of the situation that we are in, the fiscal space that we find ourselves in, Madam Speaker, it is not possible not to borrow. Yet you must still also do so responsibly. Because if today we were to say that you are not borrowing any shilling, Madam Speaker, because I have seen people ignorantly argue so many times in public spaces, Madam Speaker, then perhaps debt repayment might be the only thing that we will be able to do, because unfortunately it's the first charge on our consolidated funds, Madam Speaker. With a debt repayment of close to 1.6 trillion, Madam Speaker, then you'll be left with less than 600 trillion to fund counties, you haven't paid salaries and all that. Therefore, let's not even have that conversation, because it's totally impossible today in this economy not to borrow and fail to default, because you'll have to choose one thing. If you don't borrow, then one of the two most important charges on our consolidated account, which is debt repayment and payment of salaries, one will have to give way. Either we will have to default on debt repayment or default on salaries to all the people that earn from the Kenyan taxpayer, which includes doctors, teachers, police officers, civil servants. Madam Speaker, it's not a very interesting situation. And therefore, we have always requested that this debt management strategy be anchored on our fiscal deficit, Madam Speaker, as a good measure of whether what we are doing is right, Madam Speaker, or wrong. There must be a clear demonstration that there is an effort to consolidate fiscally, so that we continue to reduce our deficit year on year once we do our budget, Madam Speaker, to a point where you are not borrowing more than the previous year, Madam Speaker, but are borrowing barely enough to meet what is most critical, but also seek ways through which you can grow your own economy and pay up on your major debts, Madam Speaker. In fact, many people sometimes discuss about this administration and what has been its biggest achievement. While there is debate about the reforms that have been initiated in the agriculture sector, which are stellar, Madam Speaker, and you go today to public gatherings with coffee farmers, with wheat farmers, Madam Speaker, they appreciate the interventions that have been made that, Madam Speaker, continue to show positive results. But a keen student of economic management, Madam Speaker, will point out to the fact that avoiding a default and how we have succeeded the last 2 years to pay our debts in time, Madam Speaker, still ranks extremely high as the biggest achievement of this administration. At the coming into power of this administration, Madam Speaker, a default was imminent. In fact, if you recall the conversation at that particular time in the political circles, it was a matter of when, not if. In fact, there were predictions, and it had been said this administration will not last more than 3 months. It was on account of the fact that people knew the landmines that had been left by the previous administration, Madam Speaker, where everybody was certain that we were going to default, then we were going to go into a financial crisis, Madam Speaker, and a near collapse of our financial systems. How that has not happened remains to be for the history books. And while this is a conversation that is perhaps beyond the understanding of many average people who, for one reason or the other, may not be able to comprehend or follow through what this has been about, Madam Speaker, it remains to be one of the key achievements of this administration. Repaying of the Eurobond in good time, Madam Speaker, and the near $1 billion repayments actually of the, I think the SGR loan, and there's another one syndicated from one of the commercial institutions, I forget the exact name at this particular point, that has happened in the last 6 months, Madam Speaker, is something worth remembering. Therefore, the question that we should ask ourselves as a House, as we consider this report on the midterm debt management strategy, is what is it that we are doing to ensure, Madam Speaker, that in future we shall have a more sustainable economy without appearing it to grow it actually to levels beyond our repayment abilities in the near future. And if we keep on shifting goalposts, the way I see it being done, Madam Speaker, we will find ourselves in a very difficult. Everybody will keep on kicking the can down the road. Then it will get to a point, Madam Speaker, where it will no longer be possible to either repay debt and continue thriving. Therefore, I want to urge our colleagues in Budget and Finance Committee to take this work extremely seriously. I have read through this particular report, and I'm impressed by what they've done, but there's a lot more that they can do, Madam Speaker. Number one, pointing out on things which I feel the Budget and Finance Committee needs to lead this House into a conversation on. The country must be informed at every given budget-making season, including the BPS season that we are in, is how well are we reducing on the fiscal deficit. The last 2 years, is it from 4%? There was a promise that in 26-27, which is the next financial, 25-26, was going to drop beyond 3%. Is it possible, especially with the events of last year, June, happening, where government is not able to realize sufficient revenue, and also with the continuing growth on public expenditure, on critical expenditure, Madam Speaker. You know, sometimes our newspapers choose to be very simplistic and say, there's this 3 billion that is being used for renovation and this or the other. While that is an important point, it's not the main point in a budget conversation. In a budget that continues to grow, and I think the BPS statement this year was at 4.3, Madam Speaker, the fine print needs to be checked against what is it that continues to consume public expenditure, Madam Speaker. If it is salaries, Madam Speaker, is it sustainable in this day and age to continue with the year-on increase that almost all public servants continue to earn in a depressed economy such as ours, Madam Speaker? Is it also sustainable, Madam Speaker, the kind of expenditure that we see from certain key sectors of the economy? Education, of course, is the largest consumer at almost 670 billion in the BPS that I have seen. What is the saving that needs to be made there? Why am I focusing my conversation on the fiscal deficit, Madam Speaker? Because it is the only known measure that will help us appreciate the balance of revenue vis-a-vis expenditure, and therefore the difference with what we are going to borrow to meet the gap there in between, Madam Speaker. If we continue to borrow in figures of beyond 4 or 5%, Madam Speaker, basically what we are doing is that we may appear to be okay now, but it will eventually catch up with us. And this is a challenge that I want to pass on to the Budget and Finance Committee, that if possible, because I know before you, there is presently an amendment to ensure that I think we move the year. Remember when we moved from nominal terms to percentage of the GDP on the debt anchor, Madam Speaker, we actually set 2028 as a year of moving it downwards. And it's a figure that we are supposed to grow towards. There's now a proposal before Budget and Finance Committee to take it, I think, to 2030. I'm not sure, and I can't see any member of that committee in the House to remind us. While I am willing to be persuaded, Madam Speaker, by the Treasury on why that particular reality needs to be made, there are other things that it needs to be adopted with. And I've just noticed that the Vice Chair of Budget and Finance Committee is here. I hope she's paying attention, Madam Speaker, because if you are to grant that, the only way through which I can support such an amendment, Madam Speaker, is if there is a tightening of the fiscal deficit space. It must be accompanied together with it. There must be a clear path that demonstrates and says that, okay, we can grant it to you up to 2030, but demonstrate to us financial year after the other, a figure cast in law. Because I know how these budget things work, Madam Speaker, and we've been around this parliament for a while, to understand that so long as figures remain just a discussion in report, they are never going to be observed. This is perhaps the time that we must bring into the national conversation the fiscal deficit and have it put into law, Madam Speaker, so that we know in 25, 26, this is the figure beyond which we cannot be allowed to borrow beyond. In 26, 27, and that figure must studiously come down, because there's a scientific way within which you achieve that 55% by 2030, Madam Speaker. This is just 5 years that we are talking about. It's not a very long time, the way people want to put it. And if we are not careful and we do not tighten the path, Madam Speaker, we will find ourselves to be in this house, God granting us life and citizens granting us the opportunity to be here, and we will be here in 2029 discussing how to move again that 55% to 2034, unless Parliament did its work with diligence. Therefore, I hope as Budget and Finance Committee considers that proposal from Treasury, Madam Speaker, the only way, and this is my argument, as a representative of the people and as somebody who has keenly followed this conversation over the last 2 terms of Parliament, as Kenya continues to struggle with its debt situation, Madam Speaker, that I expect that it will be anchored in law alongside the percentage of debt anchor at 55%, so that it is clearly defined, a percentage beyond which we cannot borrow. If it's 3%, let it be stated, 4%, whatever the figure, Madam Speaker, so that as we do budget, then we must move away from this aspirational budget. I still don't get the rationale why we have to take it at 4.3, then after 3 months, Madam Speaker, there will be a supplementary, like what I think was signed into law today, that has reviewed most of those figures downwards, because on account of non-performance of revenue, Madam Speaker. Why can't we from the very onset just live within our means and appreciate that things are difficult? We must have a conversation as a country and say If it gets to a point where we can no longer go to the markets and borrow beyond a certain limit, yet there are things that we need to finance, Madam Speaker, what options then are we left with? Reduction in wages, maybe of public servants that earn beyond a certain figure. How much will that realize? I'm not sure it's a big figure, because you have to be realistic and not sensational like many of our journalists in the newsroom, because I believe that is only perhaps maybe 2 or 3% that earn beyond a certain figure. But then which other places can we make savings, Madam Speaker? Because the reality is that we live in a country that is yet to understand the dichotomy of balance between politics and the economy. And that will continue to be a struggle. And if we are not careful, Madam Speaker, we will actually collapse this economy because of that demand. As we speak today, many times you attend public functions in the company of the president, and when Senator Manzo is granted the opportunity to speak in Makueni, he will ask for a particular road, a particular water project to be completed, and this or the other. So because that informs the understanding of the ordinary citizen of whether to vote for an administration or not, depending particularly our electricity program, our road program, Madam Speaker, and our water programs, the three most critical asked for things, that continues to pile on to our budget. And year on year, you will see the pressure of any administration like the present one that wants to have a second term in office, then choose the easier option, which is to be politically correct and continue funding some of these programs despite the fact that we may not afford them. Because that is what the ordinary citizen understands. This conversation that we are having in this house, unfortunately, is an elite conversation, which the ordinary citizen and the ordinary voter has very little connection to. Madam Speaker, because of this thing of having to face an election subsequently, it is something that continues to trouble many administrations, from the past one, and I see that struggle even in the present administration. The fact that the government knows that they cannot possibly look down its citizens and say that I know you have asked for this particular program or this particular road, but given our financial situation, you'll have to give me 2 or 3 years. I don't think any member of parliament, I don't think any minister, I don't think any president or deputy can have the courage to say that to the ordinary citizen. Yet, if we are to rescue ourselves from this kind of difficulty, we must reach that level of honesty among ourselves as leaders and as a citizen. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, because of the political realities of the day, we find ourselves in a very difficult space. Section G of this particular report of theirs, they have set a fiscal deficit target at 4.6% of the GDP for 25-26, 3.8% for 26-27, 3.5% for 27-28, in line with the fiscal consolidation path. This is what I was talking about, Senator Tabitha. The point is this: it must be able to work out to 55%. I'm not certain that this will work out to 55% by 2030. And what is the guarantee? Remember, if you go through, and I know this because I've been a member of Budget and Finance Committee, that this 3.5% we are talking about, if you check our reports for around 2020, Madam Speaker, these were the figures that we were talking about then. They are aspirational. There is no discipline to live through them. There is no guarantee that Treasury will stick to these recommendations, Madam Speaker, unless we put it into law. That is a challenge that I'm giving this particular committee. Because what have we learned over the years? If we continue to do these reports and are happy to say that this is a projected, the only way this will become a reality is the day that we put it into law. Then after we have closed all the paths for borrowing beyond certain levels, then we will come and have an adult conversation in this house and ask ourselves very difficult questions, including our colleagues in the National Assembly who keep on growing their CDF allocations. They will be able to be faced straight in the eye and be informed that you have to make a choice, whether to fund your institutions, where your constituents go to, or grow your CDF allocation. But so long as we leave it as an aspirational figure, Madam Speaker, we are not going to slay this debt situation. Therefore, if there is a duty that we are being called to in this current session of Parliament, just the same way the 9th and the 10th Parliament were urged to fight and ensure that Kenya gets a new constitution, I am deeply convinced, Madam Speaker, that the call of this House from the people of Republic of Kenya today, Senator Manzo, more than anything that they want to hear your voice on, is on this issue of the debt. And we must be clear, and we must not, Madam Speaker, set out old paths that are tried and tested and that whose results you already know. We must be willing to bite the bullet and charter new territories that are difficult but are the only paths that can put this country back to economic recovery. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, if we continue the route that we continue to take today, it will be recorded, Senator Manzo, and it will never be recorded that you sat on the minority side. It will just be said that you are a leader in Kenya at that particular point, a very powerful one, a member of parliament, a senator, when we watch our country sink deeper and further into debt and did nothing about it. I want to request, Madam Speaker, that this conversation cannot only be sustained through a review or a report of our Budget and Finance Committee on the medium-term debt management strategy. That is a proposal from the Treasury. Senator Manzo, you must ask yourself, how can you expect to find a solution from the people that put us into trouble in the first place? Aren't we being foolish as Parliament? We have a whole research unit in the name of Parliamentary Budget Office. Very competent people. I have worked with them. Very intelligent young men and women, Madam Speaker, who at the height of the protest here in June, when we passed that motion as a House, and it's unfortunate because we haven't been able to follow through many of the recommendations. Senator Tabitha, you know that we made one of the recommendations of that particular motion was that we said we were going to have a conversation on debt guided by the Parliamentary Budget Office, not Treasury, so that we tell Treasury, it is clear you have demonstrated to the people of Kenya that you are not able to show prudence in financial management because we find ourselves in this situation because you people cannot override interest. Therefore, this is a prescribed solution. You know, when you're designing a solution, Madam Speaker, for any problem, you design it knowing or bearing in mind the kind of people that are going to implement it. Treasury has clearly demonstrated to us, the National Assembly, that perhaps will carry the biggest blame when eventually we find ourselves in a situation where we are defaulting on our debt, Madam Speaker, cannot be the ones to lead the country. It is only you at the Senate here, Madam Speaker, in partnership with the Parliamentary Budget Office, that are able to sit down and consolidate, crunch the numbers, and define a fiscal consolidation path, complete with numbers, Madam Speaker. And we pass it as we do the PFM amendment. This one where they are requesting us to go all the way to 2030, Madam Speaker. Then define the path for them so that now you work backwards and say, this is the amount of money that is available. You know, how we manage our economy, unfortunately, Madam Speaker, is that we first list the things that we want, then we ask ourselves, where will we find the money? I don't know anybody else who does that kind of budget. I thought the common sense is that you first look at what you have, then you say, what is it that I can afford? You know, I really hope, Madam Speaker, that Budget and Finance Committee will lead us into the realization of that proposal that we passed here in the month of June, immediately after the invasion of Parliament, because we gave a commitment to the country. And you cannot go to another June without Budget and Finance Committee having sat together with Parliamentary Budget Office leading the country out of this situation and mess, as opposed to just ordinary reactions to proposal. To me, it is very clear in my mind, even as majority leader, that the answer to this debt situation can never come from the Treasury. It has to come from Parliament. It cannot come from both houses of Parliament, I dare say, much as you need whatever solution you will have prescribed to pass through both houses of Parliament. but Senate must lead the way because we are less conflicted. You know, many times people look at the House of Senate, Madam Speaker, and say, oh, you don't manage any resources. And they imagine that it's a bad thing. I think actually that was the actual design of our Constitution. The fact that you are not emotionally invested in any way in any of the budgeted figures, Madam Speaker, then makes you a neutral arbiter in the determination or prioritization of needs. But so long as you take it to a house like the National Assembly where members are looking into what has gone into the State Department, where oversight, for reasons that Senator Manzo knows better than us because he used to be in that particular house, you will never achieve this fiscal consolidation. I do hope, Madam Speaker, that Senator Tabitha Mutinda has heard my sentiments, that members of the Parliamentary Budget Office, who I know to be keen and follow through the conversations such as this, are listening, because Senate must lead the way. It is only the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, I am certain about it, that can lead the country on a proper fiscal consolidation path that is written in law. Then everybody else is asked to follow through. That is the only way that we shall redeem our country from the debt strain that we find ourselves in. Therefore, with those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to support and urge colleagues to take time and read this report, but propose something better than just a report that is voted for and goes to collect dust at the Treasury. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader, for that very hearted submission on the issue of debt situation in Kenya. Senator Manzo Daniel Kitonga, Makueni County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on this very important report, and also thank the committee for making an attempt to look for solutions for this big problem of the country of debt management, and also thank the Leader of Majority for giving way forward, which is more detailed than what the committee had done. You truly, and I've been in the House for many years, you rely on Treasury, then you will never get a solution. We must now, in fact, we are supposed to be oversight Treasury, but the technocrats in Treasury have been advising the government, and a lot of time is advising the government, and they don't take any political responsibility. They are not accountable to the people as such, and we end up finding ourselves in a very big problem. I've looked at the recommendations and found that one of the very moving recommendations, and we should begin practicing it from this report, is a report talking about in future inclusion of other forms of debt instruments such as Islamic bonds called sukuk, given bonds to attract ethical and climate conscious funding. You see, we've been going to the West, and the practice with the Islamic financial dealing is that it does not, it's not haram. He doesn't, exploit. It must be minimum profits. So if we can, because unfortunately financing our budget, we still have to borrow. If we can start borrowing from friendly nations, from nations who are not going to give us very high profits in this, and also if we can renegotiate some of the loans, because the charges are too high, and the countries and organizations which have been funding us, some of them are very exploitative to our economies. I think we'll do much better. But most important also, when we get borrowed money, then we should be able to utilize this money correctly to generate economic activities in the country. Like right now, we borrow money from African Development Bank to develop Thwake Dam in particular, and the government has its own share of contribution, and the bank has a share of contribution. Now, when we delay and when we waste time on these contracted projects, we have contractors on ground. The government of Kenya has not done its performance. The government of Kenya has not made requests in good time. Then we delay, then it becomes more expensive on the project, becomes more expensive on the country. It becomes the The charges even, the more time we take, the more the charges accrue. And therefore, we need to look for friendly funding, as it has been suggested by the committee, and at the same time utilize the money well. We cannot borrow money, put it in our budget, it ends up being donated in road declarations. And I thought the advisors of the president should always have the budget proposal with them, so that when the president or any other person makes promises, they are bearing in mind what has been budgeted. If you make promises or projects which are not even budgeted for that year, which are not even in the committee of supply, or projects which were abandoned a long time ago, and then you reorganize the budget process of the country, then it means we are going to get into bigger problem because of politics. Kenyans want, and every region want developments. Every region needs roads. There are some very, very important roads in places like in Makueni, Ukia, Emali, which goes through a rich fruit growing area. And for ease of movement of fruits to the international market, you need those roads done. So when we do our roads, it's cheaper for the country in terms of buying and replacing spare parts because the roads are not hard on cars. There are roads in this country whereby even if you go with the new tires, you are likely to lose all of them in one journey, especially in northeastern and northern Kenya, where we need to access where the people are, but your tires are being damaged by bad roads. It becomes economically very difficult for the people and for the nation. And therefore, we really have to work very hard as a nation. I want to agree with the leader of majority that it is this house which will give solution. The National Assembly, in fact, used to pretend it could be the only one which could handle the issue of debt borrowing. And there was push and pull for a long time, till we ended up getting, legal advice that, in fact, for debt management and associated issues, it has to be managed by both the National Assembly and the Senate, and hence this report. Some years ago, I'm sure Zachariot will remember, the National Assembly used to refuse with it. And we don't want it to come to the Senate, where we have a voice of reason. And therefore, we need to utilize more of our experts. I am happy they consulted experts, quite a number of experts and NGOs dealing with debt management. They consulted Budget Hub. Sorry, they consulted ISPAC and professional bodies, which will think independently of the House and independently of Treasury. Such people will give us such input so that, Madam Speaker, we are able to do proper public participation on this particular matter. And then take all the good ideas on board, Madam Speaker. We have Kenyans who have worked for World Bank. We have Kenyans who have worked for international organizations, funding organizations like African Development Bank. We have Kenyans who live abroad and have gone through very good experiences. We have templates, which we can copy from countries which have succeeded in debt management. But most important, we've been borrowing the money. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Dan Manzo. When we resume, you'll have a balance of 13 minutes. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 19th March 2025 at 9:30 a.m.